Chapter 210, Skyrocketing Luck, 4. Why would he be able to speak at this time? Could it be, don't tell me, it was somehow related to that last howl when he commanded the panther? If that was the case, then she really did profit from a disaster. Su Luo's thoughts became joyful, and she used more force to rub his little head. The little dragon being able to talk was really great. Now, it would be more convenient for her to gamble on stones. Otherwise, they would be like chickens speaking with ducks, having a hard time communicating. Young lady, seeing as you are this beautiful, your luck should also be as pretty. How about cutting one open to test your luck? Maybe it really will have a red-colored crystal stone. This piece of source stone is not expensive. It will cost you no more than 1 gold coin. The middle-aged fellow saw that Su Luo had halted her footsteps, so he put more energy into selling it. Su Luo lightly smiled and said, "Since this elder brother is so optimistic, why don't you yourself cut it open and check? Maybe inside there really is a red-colored crystal stone, then you would make a huge profit." Even though red-colored crystal stones were the lowest grade among crystal stones, because there weren't much of it, so the price was still not cheap. The starting price was at least 100 gold coins. The middle-aged fellow sighed, "My hand is too black." Previously, other people who bought source stones from me could cut out a crystal stone. I bought source stones for myself for decades, but couldn't cut out a single one. Wouldn't you say that my hand is black? Black, moreover extremely black, so black that it was limitless. Su Luo held the little divine dragon in one hand and used the other to hand the middle-aged man a single gold coin. "Okay, then just this one. Then I will trouble uncle to cut out for me." That piece of source stone weighed more than 5 kilograms and was not very convenient to carry along. Consequently, Su Luo chose to cut it open on the spot. Seeing that he had succeeded in doing this business, the middle-aged man naturally was all smiles. But he looked at Su Luo with a sad air. "Young lady, you really want me to cut it open? My hand is truly very black." The implication was for Su Luo not to blame him if he couldn't cut out a crystal stone. Su Luo smiled, carelessly waved her hand and said, "No matter, if you cut something out, as long as uncle doesn't keep it, then everything will be fine." It was merely a piece of red crystal stone. She wasn't in the mood to use her own hand to cut it out. "How could I do that? Look, it's all here written in black ink on the white piece of paper. Money for the goods have now been received and the bill settled." The middle-aged man gave Su Luo a receipt. Su Luo smiled. "Then time to cut it open." The little divine dragon said that inside it there was a red-colored crystal stone. Then she was absolutely assured that there was one. The middle-aged fellow adjusted the positing of the stone a little. He first made a vertical cut, and immediately, a puff of dust filled the air. The part of the source stone that was cut was still grayish-white in color, without even a trace of containing a crystal stone. The middle-aged fellow looked at his own pair of hands, and then lifted his head to look somewhat apologetically at Su Luo. "No problem. Continue to cut. I believe in your luck." Su Luo's smile was unperturbed. Her eyes carried a touch of encouragement. In fact, it wasn't because she believed in his luck, but it was that she believed in the little divine dragon's treasure-hunting ability. This time, she had come out to cut source stones and could also, in passing, wash off the man's black hands. At this moment, a person on the side suddenly went closer. He was wearing a robe made of cloth and was wearing a Chinese skull cap on his head, a face with a shrewd mouth and monkey cheeks. At a glance, people could tell that he was not good to get along with. He coldly looked at the middle-aged man and sneeringly said, "Lu Qi, you still dare to cut source stones? Aren't you afraid of giving your bad luck to the customer?" Finished speaking, this shrewd mouth and monkey cheeks fellow with a bantering smile said to Su Luo, "Young lady, is this your first time here? You may not know, Lu Qi, this stand, hasn't cut out a crystal stone in a year already. People who understand a little of this business wouldn't buy from him. Young lady, you were fooled." Lu Qi's expression changed slightly. His hand holding the source stone faintly trembled. He angrily glared at that man. Black. I kept the literal Chinese translation. It really means bad luck or unlucky. So Chinese people who are unlucky usually say their hands are black. Chapter 211, skyrocketing luck. 5. Ultimately, he didn't say anything, slumping with his hand hanging down. In fact, his hands were truly black. Su Luo shot a glance at the man who had caused a disturbance, then her gaze returned to Lu Qi's body. Her smiling expression was easygoing and unperturbed. Uncle Lu, why did you stop? Please continue. So what if you don't cut out a crystal stone? Isn't it just a single gold coin? This miss will consider it as spending money to ask people to demonstrate stone cutting. That shrewd-mouthed and monkey-cheeked man glared at Su Luo and secretly cursed, unable to tell good from bad. Su Luo was too lazy to bother dealing with this kind of nasty person. After the facts were revealed, was the moment when he would really get slapped in the face. Lu Qi concentrated his thoughts, and from the side, made 2 separate cuts. What made people disappointed was that after the cuts, it still only had the same grayish-white color. Not a trace of any other color could be seen. Snort, the shrewd-mouthed and monkey-cheeked man let out a jeering sound. I already said, Lu Qi's black hand, in this lifetime, he won't be able to cut out a crystal stone. If he could cut out a red-colored crystal stone. If he could cut out a crystal stone, what are you going to do? Su Luo cast a sidelong glance at him. Regarding this kind of nasty character that would run over to other people's family door to compete for business, she had always disliked. She was unlikely to go and deliberately deal with this kind of person, but if this person doggedly ran into her, then don't blame her for being rude. The shrewd-mouthed and monkey-cheeked man merely said it flippantly, but unexpectedly was caught and countered by Su Luo. He was also a person who worried about losing face and firmly believed that Lu Qi wouldn't cut out a crystal stone. On the spot, he slapped the table and said, if he cuts out a crystal stone, even if it's only a red-colored crystal stone, I, Ho-san, will immediately swallow this source stone. Su Luo followed along Ho-san's gaze and looked. His finger pointed at a source stone that was about the size of a basin used for washing faces. To swallow this piece of source stone? Okay, this is possible. Since it's like this, I ask all the people present to act as witness. Su Luo saw the crowd gradually approach to surround them. Her laugh was evil and cunning. Of course, I also cannot let you be at a disadvantage. If Uncle Lu can't cut out a crystal stone, then this miss will immediately compensate you with 100 gold coins. Don't assume that just because Su Luo, without much action, had easily happened upon gold coins when needed, that she would feel that gold coins had little value. In fact, with regards to ordinary citizens, the value of gold coins were still very high. Many ordinary citizens wouldn't have a single gold coin in their hands. What they always used were either silver or copper coins. Good. I, Ho-san, take this bet with you. Everyone present will act as witnesses. Ho-san was so delighted that it went to his head. Lu Qi, that shop, had for exactly 1 year been unable to cut out a crystal stone from a source stone. How could he be so fortunate this time that he would cut one out today? Moreover, just a moment ago, he had already made 3 cuts, and not a fart could be seen. No matter how you looked at it, he couldn't possibly cut out a crystal stone. 100 gold coins. As long as he agreed, then he would get a full 100 gold coins. It was enough for him to spend extravagantly for quite a while. Only if he was a fool would he refuse such a good business. Now, Lu Qi had become somewhat tense. Even his hands were trembling. He truly had no confidence in his black hands. Young lady, how about you? Yourself do it. Who would have thought that Su Luo merely smiled and waved her hands? Her smile was casual and unruffled. No harm. You should continue to cut. Maybe following this your fortune will change for the better. Your luck may not be good, but this Mrs. Luck has always been exceedingly great. If only it was possible. Lu Qi forced a smile, but his heart didn't really believe it. For lack of a better option, he made the final cut. After making so many cuts and still nothing, there was no need for hope and expectation in this final cut. Lu Qi put down his cutting knife and was just about to apologize to Su Luo. But unexpectedly, when he lifted his head, he saw that the surrounding people without exception had all released a mouthful of cold air in amazement. Chapter 212. The scene of gambling on stones. Lu Qi followed along everyone's gaze and looked and discovered that under his own cut, a trace of light red color was revealed. Although this trace of red line didn't attract people, however, that flexible, sleek feel was very strong. At the scene, there were excited people who started to shout loudly, "A winning bet! A winning bet!" Su Luo faintly smiled. Her eyebrows rose towards Ho San on one side. Seeing that he was just about to stealthily slip away, she raised her voice and said a phrase, "Oh, where is that person who just made the bet?" The people that came and gathered around were, for the most part, people who loved rowdy events. Normally, they were not fond of Ho San's personal conduct. Seeing this, they couldn't help but to follow each other to heckle him. "Ho San, don't go anywhere. This bet isn't finished yet." "Right. The red already appeared, and now you want to go. Too late. A monk can run away, but the temple cannot. Ho San, if you leave, we will take whatever stuff we want from your shop." There were sounds of taunting, derision, and also rowdy jeering. Momentarily, Ho San's complexion was scarlet red, and the people watching in a circle deliberately trapped him in the middle. Even if he wanted to leave, he couldn't walk out. Lu Qi very carefully cut out that piece of red-colored crystal stone. His pair of eyes shone with radiance from being emotionally moved. The hands cupping the source stone was even trembling slightly. Even though it was a red-colored crystal stone worth 100 gold coins, he nevertheless, and without the slightest hesitation, delivered it into Su Luo's hands. He earnestly said, "Young lady, your red-colored crystal stone. You must be careful to safeguard it." Su Luo casually accepted it, without waiting for her to put it in her chest pocket. A few people on the side loudly started to ask, "Young lady, are you going to sell that piece of red-colored crystal stone?" Seeing that there were people inquiring, afraid of speaking late and not being able to grab it, some people immediately followed after and shouted, "Young lady, I'll give you 100 gold. You should sell this red-colored crystal stone to me." A red-colored crystal stone, with regards to the cultivation of people third-ranked or below, was very useful. Only, even if it was a red-colored crystal stone, there still weren't many of them on the entire continent. "I'll give you 110 gold. I'll give you 120 gold. I'll give you 150 gold. Immediately, the price of this red-colored crystal stone started to climb up, little by little. Even though the market price for a red-colored crystal stone was 100 gold, yet, it couldn't match the free market price. It simply could not meet the demand, and as a result, a red-colored crystal stone's price at an auction was greater than 100 gold. Su Luo faintly smiled and was just about to speak. However, without waiting for her to speak, someone called out loudly, "Our family's young master offers 300 gold. Who still dares to follow up?" Su Luo lifted her eyes to look over there. From up ahead came a juvenile-aged young master dressed in a magnificent brocade garment. He was about 17 to 18 years old, with a pair of bright and intelligent eyes. His peach blossom facial features were extremely handsome. One could see his whole body issuing out a superior air of arrogance. At first glance, he made Su Luo feel somewhat dissatisfied. The servant by his side was also arrogant and bossy. His haughtiness was out of bounds. Following the arrival of the magnificently dressed young master, all the people present were silent without words. Nobody dared to make further bids, and some people had already quietly slipped away. Now, Lu Qi also used a somewhat concerned gaze to take a quick look at Su Luo. Su Luo merely smiled faintly and cast a quick glance at that magnificently dressed young master. She briefly and clearly said, "Sorry, this miss is not selling the red-colored crystal stone." "Won't sell? Do you know who our noble young master is?" That arrogant servant had his chin lifted up high, scornfully sweeping Su Luo a glance. Whatever their noble young master fancied wasn't something he couldn't obtain. Su Luo's gaze swept around her surroundings once. All of a sudden, she shallowly smiled. As it turned out, this source stone marketplace boasting the freedom to buy and sell, was it merely said to fool people? Is the true state of affairs here actually enforcing people to buy or sell? Chapter 213. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy 1. the expression of the young master dressed in brocade stiffened. He arrogantly swept Su Luo with a contemptuous glance. He condescendingly opened his mouth to say, "Loathsome girl, you have a very ferocious little mouth. However, could it be that you came here and haven't asked around about who the master of this raw material marketplace is? Who was the master of this raw material marketplace?" She sincerely hadn't made any inquiries anyway. Was this of any importance? A touch of ridicule appeared in Su Luo's eyes as she smiled. "Oh, perhaps it is opened by your family?" If it was really opened by his family, then why would he force her to sell a small piece of red-colored crystal stone? This basically didn't make sense. The brocade-dressed young master smiled with disdain. His folding fan opened with a flip sound. His chin lifted in an immensely proud manner. He arrogantly shot a glance at the dog-like lackey at his side. That lackey understood the knowing glance, and immediately, he became high and mighty again. He pointed at Su Luo with a cold smile and said, "Ha! Ha! Lift up your ears and listen closely. Even though this raw material marketplace was not opened by our young master's family, however, it's almost the same as being opened by our young master's family." Almost the same? It looked like the difference might be huge instead. Su Luo coldly smiled. "Oh, I'd like to hear the details." Humph, humph. "I'll tell you. This raw material marketplace was opened by the Mercenary Union." That dog-like lackey had a, "You should be alarmed, terrified and kneel-down" expression. The Mercenary Union? Who knew? When Su Luo heard these two words, she immediately started to smile. If it was opened by other people, maybe her heart would have a bit of fear to restrain her, but since it was Beichen Ying's Mercenary Union, then Su Luo cast sidelong glances at the brocade-dressed young master with a smile that was not quite a smile. "Oh, it turns out to have been opened by the Mercenary Union. I respectfully salute them. Only, don't know if this young master is what kind of person at the Mercenary Union? Are you the division president? The vice president? Or the venerable president?" Su Luo cunningly, without any good intentions, tried to pin all the big titles onto the head of the young master dressed in brocade. Immediately, the brocade-dressed young master became anxious. He shot a quick glare at that dog-like lackey, and that dog-like lackey at once followed by glaring at Su Luo. He pointed at her and furiously said, "Ignorant and loathsome girl. Don't tell me you are not aware that our family's young master is good friends with President Beichening? This raw material marketplace was opened by the venerable Beichening, also equivalent to being opened by our young master. Speaking to your type of ignorant, idiotic, loathsome girl truly lowers our status." Small shrimp? Speaking to her would lower their status? Su Luo suddenly felt that her thoughts were somewhat disorderly. "Oh, since this raw material marketplace was opened by President Beichen, and your family's young master is good friends with the venerable Beichen, then presumably you should have lots of crystal stones. So it's unlikely that you would be interested in my little piece of red-colored crystal stone, right?" Su Luo used the main point to counterattack the opposition. He never expected that this loathsome girl's words were this sharp. That dog-like lackey's words were choked off. He furiously glared at Su Luo and turned his head to that brocade-dressed young master to appeal for help. The brocade-dressed young master's face now was somewhat hard to maintain. However, since the matter had already reached this point, if he conceded, it would look as if he was afraid. Then in the future, how could he stand up tall in this raw material marketplace? One could only see the brocade-dressed young master's ice-cold eyes stare at Su Luo, condensing into frost. This young master's home's crystal stones are piled up like a mountain. Still, so what? This young master just wants to buy that piece in your hand. Are you going to sell it or not? Now, one could feel an invisible power spreading from his body and pressing down on Su Luo. This belonged to a third-ranked martial artist's pressure. With regards to ordinary citizens, it was simply an existence that defied the natural order. For a moment, everyone's face was alarmed, and they retreated far away from the scene. They were afraid that they would be roped in for no reason at all. A touch of frost flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Chapter 2:14. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy, 2. A touch of frost flashed through Su Luo's eyes. Was he trying to use martial strength to coerce her into compromising? Did he take her for an easily bullied good-for-nothing without the strength to retaliate? Su Luo stood motionless in place. Her gaze was as clear and cold as water. Her slender eyebrows were folded into an austere appearance, with chilling air coming through her pupils. She only faintly smiled in that way, with her ice-cold gaze watching the brocade-dressed young master. Although her body was attacked by his spirit strength, on the surface, she appeared as if nothing had happened. She was still unruffled and composed, as if unaffected. A startled expression flashed across the brocade-dressed young master's face. He never imagined that this loathsome girl also had a little real ability. However, it was because of this that his interest in Su Luo started to increase. However, just at this time, a black-clothed middle-aged man suddenly appeared out of nowhere. His unbending gaze faintly swept a glance at the brocade-dressed young master. He raised his hand slightly, and the large, formidable pressure emitted by the brocade-dressed young master immediately dissipated into nothingness. The cold and oppressive atmosphere returned to its original state. When the brocade-dressed young master saw the black-clothed middle-aged man, immediately his pupils shrunk. A trace of reverence appeared on his face. The raw materials marketplace absolutely does not allow forced buying or selling. The black-clothed middle-aged man looked at Su Luo. His expression was undisturbed as he said that sentence. Afterwards, he turned his head to look at the young master dressed in brocade. His expression was rather displeased. Even more so, we don't allow the use of martial strength for intimidation. Before his words faded, a thin layer of cold sweat appeared on the brocade-dressed young master's forehead. As if at this moment, he was in the middle of enduring a high pressure that was difficult to describe. Both of his legs seemed as if someone had severely kicked it, they unable to bear the pressure and were about to kneel on the ground. However, he tenaciously gritted his teeth to bear with it. He strongly endured, not allowing himself to kneel. He gnashed his teeth until the grinding sounds burst out loud. The people who heard it felt their teeth ache. Yes. The brocade-dressed young master's entire body trembled as if he could not bear it anymore. He bit his teeth tightly and squeezed out one word. Quickly get lost now. The black-clothed middle-aged man frowned, as if he was very annoyed. However, in the time he lifted his hand, that powerful pressure concentrated on the brocade-dressed young master's body that wouldn't let him resist, dissipated. The young master dressed in brocade looked like a person that had been dragged out of a pool. He was drenched in cold sweat from head to toe. Even more sweat was dripping down from his face. Yes. The brocade-dressed young master weakly answered. In a flash, he brought his group of hateful servants with him and ran away with his tail between his legs without looking back. Just like this. Without turning back his head, he ran away. Everyone saw that this brocade-dressed young master was made to leave with just a few words. Some people were stunned, some were confused, but even more were full of disbelief. Correct, it absolutely was hard to believe. Why? The matter was very simple. Based on their many years of experience strolling through this raw materials marketplace, that brocade-dressed young master had done evil deeds many times before in this raw materials marketplace. However, there was never a black-clothed person who would personally appear to put a stop to him. Even more improbably, to directly force him to run away. Because everybody was aware of that brocade-dressed young master's identity. That kind of aristocratic family was not something anyone would dare to offend. However, today, the black-clothed man appeared so fast. Moreover, he showed no quarter moving against the brocade-dressed young master. In that case, was it a coincidence? Or was it deliberate? If it was a coincidence, then forget it. If it was deliberate, everyone's gaze without exception concentrated on Su Luo's body. If it was done deliberately, then this young lady's identity was perhaps very influential. Momentarily, everyone looked at Su Luo in a daze. The mood in their hearts were constantly changing with complicated or blank expressions. Now taking advantage of everyone being in a daze, a person added fuel to his feet, wanting to run away. Su Luo loudly yelled out, "Ho-san, Stand still for this lady. You want to run now? It's too late. Chapter 215. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy. 3. Hosan was the one who had previously made a bet with Su Luo. If he lost, he would have to eat the entire piece of source stone. Now, he had actually seen that Su Luo could force the brocade-dressed young master to run away, and he immediately thought to escape. However, who let Su Luo's eyes be so sharp? Ha, ha, young lady, what are you saying? I, Hosan, mean what I say. Who wants to flee? Seeing that his path was blocked in all directions by the crowd, Hosan could only grudgingly stand in place. He turned his head and smiled flatteringly towards Su Luo. Su Luo had both hands crossed over her chest, and her foot stepped on the piece of source stone that was part of the bet. She cast sidelong glances at Hosan with a faint smile. You mean what you said? Then it couldn't be better. Come, quickly eat this source stone. Really going to have to gnaw a source stone? His teeth weren't that strong. Okay? Hosan's face looked like he was suffering. He repeatedly bowed with hands in front, begging for forgiveness from Su Luo. Young lady, your venerable person has great magnanimity. Please be charitable and spare this lowly person. This lowly person really can't gnaw this source stone to pieces. If this lowly person can gnaw on it, then why would I need tools to peel this stone? Su Luo also really didn't plan on letting him gnaw on it. After all, the surface cover of the source stone was not something human teeth could make a scratch on. What was more, according to the little divine dragon's probe, the stuff inside this source stone was not bad. She would hate for Hosan, this kind of lowly person, to take it away for nothing. However, asking her to let Hosan get away in this manner? Grievances must be settled. For Su Luo, whose merciful thoughts were smaller than a pinhole, how could she possibly agree? One could only see her unhurriedly lifting up her foot and weighing that lump of source stone in her hand. She playfully tossed it up and down. The corner of her mouth had a mocking smile. Then, you say, what should be done? Hosan heard a possible softening intention in Su Luo's words, and immediately, he was all smiles. His smile was fawning and trying to get on her good side. Young lady, your luck is so good, you should not waste it. How about I give this source stone to you to settle our bet? Okay? Like this to settle the bet so easily? Do you think it's possible? Wanting to satisfy Su Luo, who was like a lion with her mouth wide open, it was not an easy thing to do. Then what does the young lady feel should be done? You say it, if I could do it, and it's not something that would violate my conscience and ethics, I, Hosan, promise to do it. Hosan patted his chest with a righteous and virtuous appearance. A young lady that could even force the brocade-dressed young master to flee. How could she be simple? If she insisted on forcing him to swallow the stone, what could he possibly do? It's not something that would violate your conscience and ethics. Su Luo faintly smiled. This lump of source stone weighs about 10 kilograms. Let's do this. I will pick another 9 stones from your pile of stones, altogether making up 10 pieces of source stones. Then, this debt, we'll call it settled. Okay? To give away 10 pieces of source stones for free? These materials were worth 5 to 6 gold coins. However, in order to honor his bet, Hosan had no other alternative. He could only agree. Okay, just do it according to what the young lady said. Su Luo's face looked indifferent, but her heart became cheerful. Poor Hosan. How would he know that she had the little divine dragon as a super cheating tool present? Su Luo had already checked out all of the source stones in Hosan's booth. Letting her choose, she would naturally pick all the good ones and take it away. Those that were left over were all garbage. Hey, didn't you, Hosan, mock Lu Chi for not cutting out a single crystal stone for a year? Then, I'll let you have a taste of not being able to cut out a single crystal stone in a year. Let's see if afterwards you still dare to indiscriminately blacken people's name. Okay, then just these 10 pieces. It seemed as if Su Luo carelessly pointed at another 9 pieces of stone. However, as a matter of fact, Su Luo had already picked out all of the source stones that contained crystal stones. Chapter 216. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy. 4. But truthfully speaking, Ho-San's stone's quality could be regarded as pretty good. In the thousands of pieces of raw material, unexpectedly, she found 2 crystal stones. As for the remaining 8 pieces, Su Luo wanted to use them to play dumb. The reason why she selected this waste material was because she wanted to keep a hand up her sleeve. When Ho-San saw Su Luo had actually gone to select among the higher quality materials, his heart was full of regret and he almost ran over. He continuously bowed with hands in front as he begged for mercy. "Young lady, please be lenient. Please, by all means, show mercy." That center position, which originally only had 5 to 6 pieces, she had rashly picked out 4 pieces. It indeed made his heart bleed almost to death. Su Luo's eyes narrowed and she carelessly said, "Okay, then just this many. Come. Since you bragged about your good luck, Ho-San, cut open all of them." Su Luo boldly used her foot to kick at that pile of source stones. If she had to carry everything home to cut, she wouldn't have that much time or manpower. Moreover, she still had other things she needed to do. Ho-San's heart hurt sorely. It wrenched in agony until he was half dead and had lost most of his life energy. This was because Su Luo had given him an age-old difficult problem. She wanted to make him personally cut these source stones. If he cut out a crystal stone, how could he not go mad from jealousy? If he was unable to cut one out, then wouldn't he be bringing black luck to his store? As a result, whether he could cut one out or not, his heart would not be happy with either result. Ho-San really couldn't understand. This miss seemed to be merely 14 to 15 years old. How could her brain be so weird and cunning? Was she trying to plot against him? To conspire against him openly and above board? Ho-San was frustrated and depressed for quite a while. However, the surrounding heckling crowd was really noisy and bustling with excitement. Added to that was Su Luo's mysterious identity. Ho-San had no choice but to lift up his spirit and cut the source stones for Su Luo. Nevertheless, he should look forward to cutting out a crystal stone. This way, the source stones in this store could all be sold for a good price. Ho-San finally came around to the idea. He continuously prayed that he could cut out a crystal stone. His hand lifted and the knife cut down. The first cut was like cutting a watermelon, starting down from the middle. The exposed 2 halves were all a gray, dusty color. Not a trace of a crystal stone's color could be seen. Ho-San was unwilling to believe it. Slice after slice, he cut everything into silk-like bands. However, as before, no trace of crystal stone could be found. "Ho-San, little fellow, your luck is not as good as Lu Chi's. Look here, today he just now cut a source stone and was able to cut out a crystal stone. What's the matter with you?" That's right. Ho-San, you should work a little harder. If you cut out a crystal stone, the source stones in your shop, Old Zhao, will buy them all." The surrounding people all liked to join in on the fun and heckled on for no reason. They unceasingly gave Ho-San more pressure. Ho-San's heart was getting angry, but he had no way to let it out. He picked up the second piece and started to cut. However, despite the fact that he had cut it into fine powder, still there was nothing. The third piece, the fourth piece. Still no trace of a crystal stone. Ho-San started to get anxious. Drop by drop, cold sweat appeared on his face. He took a furtive glance at Su Luo and only saw that she was the same as before, an appearance of being unmoved by any winds that blew. She casually stood, with a careless gaze that seemed indifferent. The fact was, cutting these source stones had no negative impact on her funds. If he cut one out, she would make a profit. If he didn't cut one out, then his own reputation would suffer a loss. Whatever happened, she was unlikely to lose out in the end. It was no wonder that she had this appearance of being secure. Once Ho-San thought to this point, he again felt a burst of suffocating anger. His heart was full of endless regret. This young miss appeared to be pure and dim. Who knew she would be this cunning? Afterwards, even if he gained 10,000 more times the courage, he wouldn't dare to oppose this little witch. Ho-San's heart suffered from pent-up frustrations, but his hands didn't stop. The hand lifted and the knife lowered. The fifth piece. Still nothing. The sixth piece. Ho-San started to waver. Chapter 217. Playing tricks on the pretty boy. 5. It shouldn't be this way. In theory, this young lady's choice was from a pretty good raw material. How could there not be a single crystal stone? This was really too unbelievable. Quickly cut it. What are you doing still staring distractedly about? Someone anxiously said. If it has it, then it is there. If it doesn't have it, then it's not there. Even if you hesitate for a short period of time, a crystal stone not being inside it would unexpectedly change to there being one. So don't delay and cut down with your knife. This person's meaning was clearly that the earlier his demise, the earlier his rebirth. Ho-san's heart was still very tangled and confused. However, under the pressure and force of thousands of eyes, he continued to cut the stones. Nothing. Cutting 6 lumps of pretty good raw materials in succession, and still can't find a single crystal stone. Right, if we were to buy these from Ho-san's shop, then we would have lost really badly. Fortunately, this old man was just looking around and didn't randomly make a purchase. That's right. It seems like this batch of Ho-san's raw materials aren't very good. The numerous sounds of discussion spread to Ho-san's ears. It made him so angry that he almost started to shout out loud. The person here who was restraining the most aggravation was him. Ho-san, okay? You guys don't spend money and are only here to watch the fun. But this uncle spent money to invite you all to watch the fun and still has to listen to your derision. Who did this uncle provoke and stir up for things end up like this? Naturally, Ho-san only dared to say these words in his heart. If you really wanted him to say it out loud, as if he was courageous enough? Now, Su Luo wrinkled her brows, as if she was unhappy. She waved her sleeves and casually said, Forget it. Forget it. Your luck is really bad. Such good source stones in your hands, and couldn't even cut out a single crystal stone. Forget it. Don't cut it. I don't want to cut more. Ho-san immediately became worried. With a sobbing voice, he said, Great aunt, it's not my hands that have bad luck. It's this source stone that just don't have any crystal stones. What can I do? He was also innocent, okay? Su Luo mockingly and sarcastically raised her eyebrows and unhurriedly said, Oh, then your meaning is that your batch of source stone's quality is not very good? Ho-san was immediately at a loss for words. How could this young lady's words be so sharp? Finished. Once again, he had been successfully attacked. This young lady was indeed attacking with a spear while defending with a shield. No matter what was said, the one out of luck was him, Ho-san. But, miss, you must let this lowly one finish cutting the rest of the stones, all right? Now, Ho-san was not afraid if Su Luo took advantage of him. He only seeked to cut out a crystal stone, trying to retrieve some confidence for the customers of his shop. Su Luo's thin eyebrows moved slightly. Cut all of them? If it was all cut to nothing by you? Forget it. Forget it. Seeing that you are not living well, just cut another one then. Su Luo used her toes to kick a source stone that rolled into his arms. Okay, don't gripe so much, just cut this one. If it has it, it's there. If it doesn't have it, then it's not there. Holding this good quality source stone, Ho-san's heart became delighted. Good. Then it's agreed. This source stone had all kinds of spots, bands, and colored patches. Also, the lines were clear at first glance, and you could tell it had a high probability of having a crystal stone. This piece was clearly selected by that girl from among the highest grade raw materials pile. Ho-san right now became a little more cautious and careful. His gaze was serious and cautious as he looked at this piece of source stone for a while. Then, he fixed the stone onto the cutting machine. He measured it once in all directions. Finally, he decided to follow along the band to start cutting from the upper left. Normally, following the direction of the band was the direction of the crystal stone. All the surrounding people were also infected by Ho-san's caution and seriousness. Everyone held their breath in rapt attention, both eyes full of lively spirit. All of their expectations were placed on this piece of source stone. The knife descended, and the dust flew upwards. After waving aside the dust particles, almost everyone's gaze was concentrated on that evenly cut opening. Chapter 218. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy. 6. Alas, it was followed by a period of sounds expressing great pity. The cut was smooth, but what made people disappointed was that even though the cut followed the band, this source stone unexpectedly, like before, still had nothing. Both sections were grayish-white. Seeing it made a person's heart feel suffocated. How could it be like this? Ho-san was beside himself as he looked at the two similar-sized halves of the source stone. His complexion gradually became pale. He never expected that even after cutting 7 pieces in succession, all of them were grayish-white stones without any worth. I don't believe this. Ho-san, with a deep breath, swept down the cutting tool in his hand and diced those 2 halves of source stone into dust. However, inside, not even a fingernail-sized crystal stone could be seen. Seeing Ho-san's hand once again reach for the source stones on the ground, Su Luo spoke to intercept. "Hold it." The crisp yell woke up the drunken Ho-san. He had a stupid and blank expression as he looked at Su Luo. Su Luo's tone was not good as she said, "You already wasted 7 of my source stones, and now you still want to continue cutting? Don't even think about it." A mouthful of blood was blocking his throat. How could it be called her source stones? These were all shipped over from far away in the southwest using his gold coins. Okay? Su Luo let out a cold humph sound. She unhurriedly put the 3 fist-sized source stones in her embroidered bag, afterwards hanging it around her waist. Finally, she swept Ho-san with a slighting glance. "The feng shui in your shop is not good. This miss will bring it hope and slowly cut it. Don't joke. These 3 pieces all had genuine crystal stones in them. How could Su Luo let Ho-san cut them? How could she set aside an opportunity for him to make a comeback? Therefore, like the old saying went, I would rather offend a person of noble character than one with a nasty character. Especially Su Luo, this kind of small-minded woman whose philosophy was hatred, would certainly seek vengeance." Ho-san looked on helplessly at that small embroidered bag at her waist as Su Luo strutted away. He wanted to call out to stop her, but discovered that his words had all been exhausted. The more Ho-san thought, the more regretful he was. He had truly slapped himself in the face this time. The crowd watching this entertainment on the side immediately dispersed and left. Ho-san became anxiously worried. If he allowed these people to leave, then today's news that he had cut 7 source stones in succession without finding a single crystal stone would spread. This would be extremely unfavorable to his shop's reputation. Hey, you guys don't go." Ho-san continuously tried to stop these people. "I still haven't finished cutting it all. You guys have a look. Maybe a piece of crystal stone could be cut out." "What? Ho-san, young fellow, you still dare to cut more?" The old man being pulled unceasingly shook his head and advised him, "Forget it. Don't let your emotions affect your decisions. Your luck today is truly bad." No way. He couldn't let them go like this. Ho-san loudly shouted, "Halt! Ho-san, will cut 10 source stones today and see if there is a crystal stone inside." Hearing that there was entertainment to see, the sound of everyone's footsteps stopped. Their gaze once again returned to Ho-san's body. Ho-san summoned his courage. He personally ran over to the shop and picked out a source stone. He slapped at the source stone and heroically said, "Betting on source stone, betting on source stone. Since we are gambling on source stones, then by all means, bet on it. Now, let's lay down the bet. Buying the bet that the source stone has a crystal stone. The payout is 1 to 100. The bet that there is no source stone, payout is 1 to 1. Buy quickly, place your bets, and no thanks necessary." Ho-san lost those 3 source stones to Su Luo. His wishful thinking returned and suddenly thought of this method to gamble. However, the pitiful him was completely unaware, because of the existence of the little divine dragon. The only 3 pieces of source stones within his shop that had crystal stones had all been fished out by Su Luo. The remaining were all waste materials. If he knew, he definitely would not choose this way to gamble, because this was absolutely losing with no possible chance to win. Only it was a pity. He didn't know. As a result, as the saying went, you truly couldn't offend a younger sister, one. Especially an intelligent younger sister that loved to hold grudges. 1. I translated it as younger sister, but the characters said younger sister on paper, probably a play on words that might mean beautiful paper, based on how it sounds in Chinese. I am guessing it could be a slang to describe someone shallow or petty. Chapter 219, Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy, 7. Su Luo had already left earlier. Naturally, she did not know about Ho San's self-styled genius idea that he came up with later to recover his losses. If she had known, she would very likely be laughing until her body rocked back and forth, because she could entirely predict that after all the bets were placed and the source stone was cut, Ho San's face would be like a colorful palette. This raw materials marketplace was huge. This, however, was Su Luo's first time here. As she was unfamiliar with the layout, she could only leave it to her luck. Only that in Su Luo's point of view, and from her experience, every profession would have their own circle and regulations. Such as gambling stones, if she didn't have a referral from people in the profession, she wouldn't know where the few hidden shop of experts were located. Even though she had the little divine dragon who could sense crystal stones in her space, if she wasn't even allowed to enter their shop, then it was still useless. Just when Su Luo was worrying while walking around, suddenly, two little boys ran towards her, trying to catch up with her. However, Su Luo was on guard and turned sideways to avoid them. Those two little boys hadn't expected Su Luo to react in that way. They had a somewhat stunned expression, but very quickly, their expression was restored. They were play fighting and being noisy, and continued to run until they were far away. The corner of Su Luo's mouth rose into a shallow smile. Even if she had ended up in ancient times, she was still as proud as before of her accurate sixth sense. Just now, she felt that the two little boys that were noisily play fighting were fishy, so she turned sideways to avoid them. Soon after, their reaction wholeheartedly confirmed her suspicion. Those two little boys were deliberately pretending to fight playfully in order to get nearer to her side to steal her purse. As expected, she would have to be careful everywhere she went in this raw materials marketplace. If she didn't pay close attention, then she wouldn't be able to protect her purse. Even such young kids knew to form groups to steal. Su Luo just smiled and proceeded to walk forward. Only, she didn't take more than a few steps before her figure halted. This was because a boy wearing old-fashioned clothes, which was clean and neatly washed, stood in front of her. With a deadly earnest tone, he started to speak to her. "Most noble miss, do you need a guide? Don't just look at me being young. My home is only 10 meters away behind this marketplace. From when I was little, I grew up in this gambling stones marketplace. I'm familiar with everything within here. Whatever information you need, I could tell you everything. In addition, I could also take you to the hidden shops." The little boy's clothes were old-fashioned and his proper pants had been worn until it was mostly tearing apart. The cloth-made shoes were worn out, with a hole exposing his big toe. Seeing Su Luo's gaze sweep his pair of shabby shoes, he was somewhat anxious and shifted his foot to the back. However, no matter how he shifted, under the shortened pants, he couldn't conceal that big toe of his. Su Luo's gaze once again landed on the little boy's face. Looking at his age, this child was definitely no older than 10 years of age. Who would have thought that this poor and embarrassed little boy could have such a pink face that looked like it was carved from jade? Simply owing to experiencing a life of suffering and hardship, this little face was stretched taut into a dead serious expression. It had a little grown-up, mature appearance. However, this was indeed similar to when a drowsy person was handed a pillow. It was just in time to suit her needs. Just a moment ago, Su Luo had been pondering how to get a person familiar with this market to take her to the hidden shops in the inner part of the marketplace. The reason was that frequently, only those shops would have stored good quality raw materials for a long time. Those other little small shops were unable to enter her eyes and be deemed as worthwhile. Right now, it just so happened that the little boy had delivered himself to her door. However, Su Luo was also not someone who would welcome just anyone. She indifferently took a glance at that little boy and lightly asked, "Why is it that you didn't join those two? Looking at their appearance, they live a much better life than you." Su Luo was referring to those two little boy thieves who had tried to bump into her before. Chapter 220. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy. 8. The little boy in front of her was shaking his head in disagreement. Once you enter the door to thievery that's deeper than the ocean, from then on, your conscience becomes a stranger. Mother always taught me that regardless of when and regardless of landing in whatever circumstances, I must adhere to the basic conscience of my heart. I must be upright and frank. I cannot do work that is against my own conscience. Seeing the little boy's deadly earnest preaching appearance, Su Luo suddenly felt that this was very funny. She had an impulsively strong desire to pinch his pink and tender cheeks. She continued to ask another sentence. Oh? You really have never stolen anything? I don't believe it. I only stole one thing, and it was a loaf of bread. That was when my little sister was so hungry she was gnawing on the corner of the table. I had no other choice. The rim of the little boy's eyes were a little red. He was also afraid that Su Luo would spurn him and cause him to lose this job. He anxiously explained. However, the next day, I earned some money and paid back the money for the stolen bread. Really, I am telling the truth. Su Luo saw him become so anxious that his face was flushed and couldn't help but laugh. Why are you so anxious? It's not like I am that person who was selling bread. Okay, tell me your price. This miss want to see if you are suitable. Su Luo could tell that this little boy's genes were excellent. Maybe the cause was his family suffered a reversal of fortunes. Even though his living situation had become poor, but his character was still as good and honest as before. Just as he himself had said, he adhered to the ethical principles. Someone who could adhere to the basic principles during poverty, let alone a child. This point was exceptionally hard to come by. The little boy didn't know that Su Luo's assessment of him was pretty good. He was afraid of being spurned by the employer, so with a red little face, he anxiously said, I am very inexpensive. I only charge 10 copper coins per day. Seeing that Su Luo didn't reply, thinking that she believed it to be too expensive, he anxiously changed his answer. 5 copper coins, 5 copper coins is enough. Mother's medical prescription needs at least 4 copper coins, and I need to buy some thin wheat for little sister to eat. She is young and her throat is small. If she drinks coarse grains, she would throw it up. His pair of large, dark, and clear eyes unblinkingly looked at Su Luo. Inside of them, there was pleading, longing, and also hope. It was very complicated and heavy. Just looking at it made a person's heart feel sad. Su Luo's heart inevitably felt some sentiments. At such a young age, he needed to take care of a sick mother and a frail younger sister. That he could still adhere to the basic principles was really not easy. Su Luo patted his little head. Okay, 10 copper coins then. It's settled at 10 copper coins. If today older sister reaps some profit, then I will give you more as an additional reward. Su Luo's hand reached into her sleeves and originally thought to pay him 5 copper coins as down payment to boost his enthusiasm. However, she suddenly recalled that compared to this little bit of money, she really was too rich. Because the only currency in her hands were gold coins, she didn't even have a single copper coin. Never mind, let's discuss it when the time comes. If he passed her test, she could award him not merely 10 copper coins or 10 gold coins, but rather the boundless prospects for this little boy's future for the rest of his life. Even though Su Luo hadn't given him a down payment, the little boy was already very thankful for her kindness. The little boy was extremely happy. He was bowing and also giving thanks at the same time. Many thanks, miss. Thanks a lot, miss. You are a good person. A very good person. Because very few customers would hire a child like him. The customers either wanted tender and beautiful women with great bone structure, or an agent with numerous connections. He was already satisfied with just being hired. Su Luo saw that he didn't mind it, so she also didn't mention it. Oh, that's right. What are you called? She wanted to observe this child more carefully, to see if he was worthy of being cultivated by her. Su Xiaoyuan. Miss can call me Su Boy, Xiaoyuan or Dumpling. Whichever one you want to use is okay. Su Xiaoyuan was smiling until both his brows and eyes curved upwards, appearing very excited. Chapter 221. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy. 9. Your last name is also Su? Hee hee. Maybe 500 years ago, We were from the same family. Su Luo smiled while patting his shoulder. Okay, go to the front and lead the way. Today, the time is still early. We should properly roam around this raw materials marketplace. Oh, that's right. Did you also see my and that brocade-dressed young master's conflict just a moment ago? While walking, it seemed Su Luo suddenly thought of something, and she carelessly asked this to Su Xiaoyuan. Yes, indeed I did see it just now and also recognized that brocade-dressed young master. Does Miss want to ask about his identity? Xiaoyuan asked seriously. Sure enough, this child was not stupid. With regards to his customers, he filtered them carefully through diligent observation. He did not just recklessly rush up to them to ask. Okay, tell me his information, Su Luo softy said. He couldn't make out the client's mood, so with a firm expression, Xiaoyuan replied. Speaking of that brocade-dressed young master, his background is indeed very powerful. I heard his last name is Liu. He is the second son of Prime Minister Liu, called Liu Chengfeng. Miss, in the future, you should carefully avoid him a little. Reportedly, this person is very petty and will certainly avenge any hatred. From his perspective, a son of the venerable Prime Minister's family was the highest and most noble existence. It was an existence that he could only look up at from afar. Su Luo's eyebrows rose slightly. Liu Chengfeng? Prime Minister Liu's family's second young master? Prime Minister Liu, these three words, why were they so familiar? Suddenly, a light bulb went on in Su Luo's head. Finally, the answer appeared. Liu Ruohua. Wasn't Liu Ruohua the third miss from Prime Minister Liu's residence? Then wouldn't Liu Chengfeng be her older brother? Hee. Sure enough, people marry because they share the same traits. Two of the Prime Minister Liu's family's younger generation had become her enemy. It looked like her, and the Liu residents were unable to get along. However, speaking of Liu Ruohua, Su Luo suddenly recalled a matter related to her. That day when she returned to her own remote courtyard, Su Wan had brought their cheap father and hurriedly arrived. At that time, Su Wan was certain that she hadn't returned yet. Then, who was it that told Su Wan the news that she still hadn't returned? Moreover, how could she confidently say that Su Luo and His Highness Prince Jean went to the Sunset Mountain Range, and also say that she and the Jade Lakes Fairy had a conflict? Who was this person? Simply someone who called out with such passion. Liu Ruohua. Besides her, there simply was no one else. Then, the matter of when Su Wan invited the black-clothed hitman to rape her in the middle of the night. To what extent did Liu Ruohua participate in it? It looked like when she returned, she really needed to properly admire the moon and have a heart-to-heart talk with Su Wan, who was locked in the clear-thinking courtyard. Having thought up to here, the corner of Su Luo's mouth lifted slightly. Speaking of which, Su Xiaoyuan was indeed the local boss of this area. After 7 to 8 turns into very small streets, he brought Su Luo to an old street with simple, unadorned, old-fashioned houses. He pointed to an old-fashioned residence with a courtyard and said to Su Luo, Miss, this is the home of Elder Chun. Elder Chin's family's hidden shop is among the most abundant in supply of raw materials, and with the most variety of highest grades material. Naturally, the price is also very high. Su Luo's gaze swept the surroundings once. This place appeared somewhat remote and desolate. It didn't look lived in, and very few people passed by here. The area had a quiet and deserted appearance. However, this did give off a little of the atmosphere of a hidden shop. Just like in Su Luo's previous world, the most authentic delicious food was not at the noisiest city center, but was often located at unremarkable places. A tourist with a fleeting glance in passing and without a person guiding them often wouldn't be able to find these places. Su Xiaoyuan's little knuckles went knock, knock, knock on the door, in a pattern of 3 long and 2 short knocks. Not long after, the door opened with a creaking sound. At the doorway, a very old face, like the skin of an orange peel, appeared. His entire face was full of wrinkles, with turbid eyes and grizzled hair. He appeared to be an elderly man of 80 or 90 years old. Chapter 222. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy, 10. Uncle Chun, I brought over a customer for you. Su Xiaoyuan reverently bowed with hands held in front of him. He had a differential expression. His eyes were clear and pure. Old Chin's sharp eyes were like the point of a knife launched towards Su Luo, in just that straightforward way, staring at Su Luo. Su Luo hardly took it lying down and returned the stare. Her back was straight and her gaze was chilly without a single ripple. Her imposing manner was not in the least going to back down. Both of them stared at each other face to face for a long time, neither side's willing to give way. Finally, it was still Old Chun who lost the staring contest first. Only, Old Chun neither nodded nor shook his head. He turned around and with hands behind his back, went in. He softly spit out merely 3 words. Open the door. With this, she had passed the test? Su Luo, with a somewhat speechless expression, looked at Su Xiaoyuan. Up until now, Su Xiaoyuan had been holding his breath, and he was finally able to let it out. He patted his stomach and took a breath, but his smile was radiant. Let's go. Uncle Chun agreed to let us go in. This place would actually drive customers away? Su Luo felt that this was somewhat unfathomable. Xiaoyuan proudly raised his little head and said to Su Luo, of course, Uncle Chin's temper is eccentric. Normally, he doesn't like to see strangers. That's why he is not fond of being bothered by strangers. People who can come here normally are people who had done business with him for a few times, and the collaboration was a pleasant one. People like Miss, who is coming here for the first time and is welcome to go inside, are very few, very few. Isn't it because I relied on your fortune? Su Luo smilingly replied. It's not. I also brought clients here a few times before, but without exception, they were all driven away by Uncle Chun. Xiaoyuan's expression was serious as he continued. There are 3 types of people that could enter this courtyard. One type is the business people that had pleasant collaborations with him. Another type is people Uncle Chin say that brought them together through fate. And the last kind is, what is it? Su Luo curiously asked. Foolish spendthrift. Xiaoyuan covered his mouth as he smilingly responded. Foolish spendthrift? Su Luo had a hard-to-accept expression. Then you tell me, do I belong to the second type or the third type? Xiaoyuan was all smiles as he glanced at Su Luo. Older sister, naturally, you are the type which fate brought you together. As for the foolish spendthrift, take him for an example. Su Xiaoyuan's finger pointed towards a brocade-dressed pretty boy youngster. However, when he saw that guy's face as he turned around, the smile at the corner of his mouth immediately stiffened. It transformed into a sobbing tone. Miss, I really didn't do this on purpose. I really didn't know he would be here. The person that scared Xiaoyuan stiff was none other than the person who had wanted to forcefully buy Su Luo's red-colored crystal stone from before. The brocade-dressed young master who was driven away from the raw materials marketplace by the supervising guards. He was also Lu Ruahua's older brother, Lu Changfeng. Seeing this face, a short saying flashed through Su Luo's heart. This truly was enemies on the same narrow road. Such a large raw materials marketplace. So many hidden shops, and against all expectations, she once again ran into him. Now, this Lu Changfeng young master was right in the middle of cutting a stone, piece by piece. Su Xiaoyuan saw those stones and couldn't help stared wide-eyed with a somewhat incredulous expression. Oh heavens! These source stones are all of the highest grade. Every piece was more than 50 gold, and he actually cut it like cutting a vegetable, cutting randomly and negligently. If he was to break the crystal stone from this cutting method, then it would be a pity. A broken crystal stone from cutting would have its spirit force dispersed outwards. If it was not refined for cultivation and following a period of time and postponement, the spirit force would become less and less until it all fade away. Therefore, the price of a broken piece of crystal stone generally wouldn't sell for very high. Su Luo's hands encircled her arm. She contentedly laid against the mahogany pillar. She indifferently watched as Lu Changfeng cut the stones. Now, as for Lu Changfeng, he still hadn't discovered Su Luo's presence. His entire attention was concentrated on the source stone in his hand. Seeing piece after piece of source stone, he was full of hope, but after cutting it open, it had thoroughly disappointed him, and an angry expression flashed across Lu Chengfeng's face. Chapter 223, Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy. 11. Lu Chengfeng's luck didn't seem to be very good. He had cut 9 source stones in a row, without even mentioning higher-grade crystal stones. Even red-colored crystal stones hadn't appeared. Now, placed in front of Lu Chengfeng was an oval-shaped source stone about the size of a soccer ball. Just looking at its exterior, it should perform very well. There were spots and snake-like stripes, clearly labeling it as having great potential to produce a crystal stone. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been picked by Lu Chengfeng. Only, didn't know if the inside was as promised. After all, regarding the human race, even if they were the most formidable experts, they still weren't able to penetrate through the outer layer of the source stone to determine what's inside. This was the last piece of source stone he had purchased. Lu Chengfeng was hesitantly holding the source stone, uncertain where he should start cutting. He measured the stone up, down, left and right. He was reluctant to start cutting. Today, he had spent 1,000 gold coins and had carefully selected these 10 lumps of source stones. However, after cutting the preceding 9 stones, they had all contained nothing but waste materials. If this last piece still didn't succeed, then his 10,000 gold coins had only bought the sound of water floating away. 1,000 gold coins, that was equal to 10,000 silver coins. Even though he, Lu Chengfeng, was the second son from the most noble prime minister's family, this amount of money was also not something he could easily throw around. Now, Lu Chengfeng was undoubtedly nervous and apprehensive. He laid down the stone-cutting knife and from the side, took out a sharpening knife. He carefully and gently started from the left, slowly following along the direction of the snake-like banding polishing into the stone. After polishing the stone for about 10 minutes, Lu Chengfeng clearly became somewhat impatient. He directly changed back to the stone-cutting knife and without gesturing, he immediately cut down in the middle, starting to slice towards the sides. A cracked sound echoed. The source stone split down the middle into 2 pieces. The cut was neat, even and smooth as if it was tofu. It was a pity that the inside was all grayish-white. Not even the shadow of a crystal stone could be seen. Bang! Lu Chengfeng angrily threw down the stone-cutting knife. His eyes just happened to catch sight of Su Luo, who was directly facing him, with a smile that was not quite a smile. Enemies meeting on the same narrow road. When enemies came face to face, their eyes blazed with hatred. Even more so when meeting under these kind of circumstances. It's you. Lu Chengfeng recognized Su Luo with one glance. A pair of darkened eyes now were covered with even more haze. They glared at Su Luo with a very vicious and cold expression. The corner of Su Luo's mouth lifted into an unsympathetic smile. Her eyebrows rose slightly and she carelessly said, "Yes, it's this lady. What are you going to do about it?" Lu Chengfeng hadn't had a chance to speak before the dog-like lackey at his side had already rushed forward. He arrogantly said to Su Luo, "Do you know the status of our young master? You actually dare to use this kind of attitude to speak to our family's young master?" Such a minor servant, Su Luo didn't feel like wasting words on him and directly ignored him. She merely shook her head and looked down upon Lu Chengfeng. "Second young master lose luck? TSK, TSK, TSK. Shut up." Just now, Lu Chengfeng's mood was not so good, and to also be confronted with Su Luo's taunting banter, a ball of fire combusted into a raging flame in his heart. "This is the Chun residence, not your Lu residence. Put away your son of prime minister's behavior, unless you're not afraid of losing face," Su Luo leisurely said while sitting on a deck chair under a wisteria tree on the side. Her gaze indifferently swept a glance at Lu Chengfeng. The expression in her eyes was full of disregard. Lu residence, the prime minister's son. As it turned out, she actually knew he was Prime Minister Lu's family's second young master. Then, why would she dare to act this way towards him? What was her background? Where did she get the confidence to dare disregard himself in this way? Lu Chengfeng's eyes narrowed slightly. A thread of stunned surprise flashed through his eyes. Right now, Su Luo was stroking the little divine dragon, who was sleeping charmingly and naively in her lap. The little divine dragon wasn't even a little bit conscious of his nobleness as a golden divine dragon. He was sprawled on his back, laying down in Su Luo's lap. His little belly swelled and released continuously, while a thread of saliva hung at the corner of his mouth. Evidently, he was in a deep sleep. Chapter 224. Playing tricks on the pretty boy. 12, however, taking into consideration of his instinct for security. His little paws had tightly grabbed onto Su Luo's lapel, afraid of being discarded. Your little puppy actually seems pretty good. Lu Changfeng discarded that useless source stone. He was not going to cut anymore. With both hands behind his back, he leisurely walked over to Su Luo's side. He arrogantly looked down while sizing up the little divine dragon in her lap. Tell me, how much is this little thing? This lord wants to buy it. Wanted to buy the little divine dragon? The corner of Su Luo's mouth slowly split at the seams into an arc. She shot a pondering gaze at Lu Changfeng. Was the little divine dragon something a person who wanted to buy could buy? I'm afraid that even if the prime minister worked for 100 lifetimes as a prime minister, he still wouldn't be able to collect enough money to buy a single hair on the little divine dragon. Su Luo lightly said, "Not selling. Loathsome girl. Our family's young master wanting to buy your puppy is considered him favoring you. How dare you fail to appreciate his kindness?" Didn't know from where that dog-like lackey came out once again. He arrogantly pointed at Su Luo's nose and cursed. All of a sudden, white-colored rays of light appeared in front of their eyes. Then a bloody mist sprayed out. That dog-like lackey saw his own right hand neatly severed at the wrist. At the moment, he still hadn't reacted to it. As soon as his reaction caught up, the pain immediately made him screech out loud like a slaughtered pig. His pain made him run around the courtyard haphazardly. You, Lu Changfeng didn't expect that this loathsome girl would be this vicious. Before she even said anything, she would strike and had already attacked. He loudly roared with anger, saying, "How can a woman like you be so malicious? Too vile." What? Young Master Lu also wants this miss to cut off his repulsive tongue? Su Luo unhurriedly gestured towards the dagger covered in dripping blood. She shot Lu Changfeng an indifferent glance. This woman? Lu Changfeng's heart trembled a little, but his face had an expression of enduring this while he angrily said, "Since you know who I am, then very good. You dared to injure someone from the Lu family, then wait for the Lu family's retaliation. People from the Lu family will absolutely not be bullied like this in vain." Su Luo looked down at him and smiled. "You keep saying using the Lu family name to retaliate. Lu Changfeng, are you still a little kid who would go home to ask the older generation for help?" She actually dared to look down on him. Lu Changfeng was almost choked half to death by Su Luo's last half of her sentence. He furiously said, "Good, very good. You are very good. If you have the guts, then report your real name." When Su Luo came to the raw materials marketplace, she was afraid of things that would emerge that she couldn't gain control of. Therefore, she intentionally made over herself to look only 30% like her real appearance. It was assured that even if Sushi stood in front of her, she may not necessarily recognize her. She currently came here concealing her real appearance. Why would she report her real name? Was this Lu Changfeng's brain burned until he was confused? Just at this moment suddenly, the little divine dragon in Su Luo's lap woke up. He opened his misty eyes. Those sleepy eyes drowsily looked at Su Luo. His right little paw was rubbing at his eye socket. That face had an innocent and bewildered expression which was really too adorable for people to ignore. Su Luo, when faced with his expression, her heart immediately went soft. Such an adorable little thing. Really didn't want him to grow up. Lu Changfeng saw that Su Luo's attention was now attracted to the puppy, completely ignoring the prime minister's son in front of her. Suddenly, he flew into a rage over this humiliation. His hand grabbed towards the little divine dragon and coldly said, "Since it's like this, then this puppy will be considered your offer of apology. Now, he belongs to me. You actually dared to snatch away the little divine dragon. Tired of living? Before Su Luo could take action, one could only see the hand reaching towards the little divine dragon suddenly blow out a bloody mist. Afterwards were the desperate cries of an utterly discomfited Lu Chengfeng. Eh. Chapter 225. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy, 13. How sharp was the little divine dragon's teeth? At that time, the arrow from the Jade Lake's fairy which had contained the strength of heaven and earth was also gnawed to bits by him, as if chewing on a sugar cane. To say nothing of Lu Chengfeng's human body made of flesh and blood. However, the little divine dragon was still in a drowsy state, therefore his actions were much gentler than when awake. So, he only took a tiny bite of Lu Chengfeng's flesh. Lu Chengfeng saw that the back of his hand was missing a mouthful of flesh, with blood violently spurting out. Immediately, he furiously yelled, "Loathsome girl! Today, you are toast. Don't you even think about walking out of this door." The sounds of activity here were too loud, arousing the attention of Old Chun inside the room. Now, his eyebrows wrinkled, with his body straight and tall, and both hands behind his back, step by step, he strolled out into the courtyard. A trace of annoyance and impatience flashed across his eyes. "Stop making so much noise. If both of you keep this up, then get out." If Old Chin was a proprietor of a regular hidden store, then no problem, but unfortunately, he wasn't. Everybody knew that behind the scenes, Old Chin, in this raw materials marketplace, was linked to countless connections. Hence, in Old Chin's residence, nobody dared to be impudent. If you were to offend Old Chin and be put on the blacklist, then afterwards, you wouldn't even be allowed to go through the entrance of this raw materials marketplace. So, even though Lu Chengfeng was infuriated until he was screaming, he still wouldn't dare to take action in front of Old Chun. Only his treacherous gaze was full of viciousness, sinisterly staring at Su Luo. Thus, this confirmed how strong his wrath was in his heart. Su Luo only faintly smiled as if unconcerned about his ire. Just at this time, suddenly, the little divine dragon in Su Luo's lap started to move about. He jumped out of Su Luo's lap like a graceful leopard and onto the ground. One could see him run quickly towards where Lu Chengfeng was cutting source stones. Finally, he stopped at the last source stone Lu Chengfeng had cut before. That lump of oval-shaped source stone had already been split into two pieces by Lu Chengfeng. It was divided into two equal-sized half-spheres, and the little divine dragon jumped on top of the right half of that source stone while barking a woo, a woo. Su Luo was delighted. What was the little divine dragon? He was a mobile crystal stone detector. A crystal stone that could make him excited. How could it be inferior? However, just when Su Luo was in the midst of being excited, Lu Chengfeng had also recovered his thoughts. He took large strides to walk towards that piece of source stone and was about to brush the little divine dragon away. However, the little divine dragon merely bared his fangs at him. Su Luo's footsteps stopped. She worriedly held up her forehead. Not of the human race, really not human-like. Even if you are from the noble divine dragon race, this IQ really made people worry about him. This source stone was originally Lu Chengfeng's. Now, with the little divine dragon's fervent performance, anybody would know that there was a problem here. Although Lu Chengfeng didn't know that the little divine dragon could detect crystal stones, he could tell that this was a good omen. Anybody would look at the cut source stone more closely to get to the bottom of it. As expected. Now, Lu Chengfeng laughed evilly again and again. He summoned his subordinates. "Drive this puppy away. Afterwards, place this half of the source stone onto the cutting device. This lord will properly cut it, and check to see if there is or isn't a crystal stone inside." Su Luo somewhat regretfully sighed. It looked like this time she had made the clothes for other people, only letting Lu Chengfeng snatch away this small advantage for free. Originally, he had already discarded it as something he didn't want. Alas, this feeling of lost was damn stifling. However, just at this time, something happened that startled the heavens and reversed the situation. One could only see the little divine dragon hugging that half of source stone tightly. He was unwilling to let go. Seeing everyone come towards him and about to encircle him, he immediately became anxious. He was so anxious that he frantically circled around on top of that half of the source stone. Finally, the him that was quick-witted in an emergency. Chapter 226, Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy, 14. He stuck his little butt up high, his thin right hind leg lifted up and aimed at that half of source stone. With a twinkle sound, he let out a stream of yellow pee. The corner of Su Luo's mouth pursed. Not being able to bear anymore, she turned her head away. As his master, how could she not feel embarrassed? Okay. Lu Chengfeng's mouth pumped a few times, and he had a constipated expression on his face. His brows knotted in disgust. At this time, even old Chin's sharp as a knife expression also pursed slightly. His ancient, well-like deep pupils, which were normally placid, now had a thread of laughter. Because this little guy really was too. It just made people speechless. Other families' little animals would protect their food. However, nobody had ever heard of one that tried to snatch a source stone. It really was an offbeat puppy that was full of mystical characteristics. Following a period of silence, Lu Chengfeng was the first to react. He glared at Su Luo sinisterly. The corner of his mouth perked up into an evil sneer. That half of source stone was sullied by your pet. Now, you tell me what should be done. Hearing his tone, it was as if the fault lied with her. However, things ending up this way was not so bad. Nobody discovered her gaze wandering over with a greedy light that had disappeared faster than a wink. Su Luo frowned. She didn't have a worried expression and threw a quick glare at the little divine dragon. Again, she frowned and said to Lu Chengfeng, "Isn't it just some urine on the surface of the source stone? Just cut it away and it would be fine." Since Lu Chengfeng had already decided to place the blame on her, how could he be made to let go so easily? He was already prepared to extort a lot of money from her and earn back all the money he had lost today from buying source stones. One could only see that Lu Chengfeng's expression was not agreeable as he coldly smiled. "You tell me to cut it away, so then I'll just cut it away? Then what do you want? Want me to ask a person to clean it before returning it to you?" Su Luo's expression appeared to be angry in an instant. She fought back with her reply. "Humph. The surface can be washed clean, but what about luck? Maybe inside it was a green crystal stone worth 5,000 kilograms of gold. Since your obnoxious puppy peed on it, all of the luck disappeared. This debt, how do you want to settle it?" Lu Chengfeng arrogantly raised his chin and said forcefully, Your type of person. How can you be so capricious and mule-headed? If there was one inside it, then it has one. If it doesn't have it, then it really doesn't have it. This crystal stone was formed several thousands of years ago. How could it be made to disappear by my puppy's pee? Who are you trying to kid? If you want to extort from me, you should at least make up a good reason. It seemed as if Su Luo had not been lightly angered. Her face had turned red, and she was stamping her feet in fury. Yet, the more Su Luo acted this way, the more pleased Lu Chengfeng became. One could only see him laughing evilly repeatedly, pointing at the little divine dragon who was still howling a woo at half of the source stone. "Isn't it your family's puppy?" Su Luo nodded her head. Lu Chengfeng seized this opportunity to pressure her even more. Did he or did he not just pee? Su Luo once again nodded her head. Lu Chengfeng said with relish, "Then, these gold coins, are you going to compensate for them or not?" Su Luo frowned, shook her head and said, "That half piece of source stone was already something you discarded and didn't want. How could you ask me for compensation? It's too unreasonable." "Humph, who said this lord doesn't want that half piece of source stone? This lord spent money to buy source stones. Why wouldn't I want it? You think this lord is wealthy enough to burn money?" The more Lu Chengfeng said, the more he gave off a victorious, imposing manner. Step by step, he pressured Su Luo. "Are you going to pay or not? If you are not going to pay, then this lord will pluck the hair off your puppy one strand at a time and make barbecue dog meat steamed buns out of him. Su Luo seemed to have been greatly infuriated, but she had no alternative. Finally, she clenched her teeth and said, "In the end, what do you want to do?" 1,000 gold coins. With a flip sound, Lu Chengfeng opened his folding fan and fanned himself in a satisfied manner. He conceitedly raised his chin and shot a glance at Su Luo from the corner of his eyes. 1,000 gold coins, the money to settle the debt for the goods delivered. Not taking credit for payment. Chapter 227. Playing Tricks on the Pretty Boy, 15. He had spent 1,000 gold coins here at Old Chin's place and had bought 10 lumps of source stone. However, he had not reaped any gains from those source stones. Now, it just so happened he had bumped into an enemy with more money than sense. If he didn't blackmail her, who else was he going to extort money from? Lu Chengfeng fanned himself. His face had an abnormally sinister smile. Su Luo's brows were tightly creased with a bullied and anxious appearance. 1,000 tael? No way. At most 100 tael. The price is fixed at 1,000 gold coins. Lu Chengfeng coldly snorted and arrogantly lifted his eyebrows. How could you just open with a random price like this? Clearly the previous 9 source stones were all cut open and not even a fart could be seen. How could you ask me to also pay your bill for those? Do you really regard me as a fool? Su Luo glared at him, not at all convinced. Lu Chengfeng fanned himself and unhurriedly said, "This lord concedes that you said a lot. However, this lord wants you to hand over 1,000 gold coins now. Otherwise, that obnoxious puppy of yours will be this lord's compensation." Humph, humph, now you choose. Su Luo appeared to be at a loss. She hesitated for a while and finally feebly asked, "Couldn't you make it a little less expensive?" "No way." The more Su Luo's manner weakened, the more imposing and strong Lu Chengfeng's manner became. He was overbearing and forceful as he waited for Su Luo's response. 1,000 gold coins, the price is non-negotiable. Now reply quickly. Are you going to compensate me in gold coins, or give me that obnoxious puppy? At this moment, Lu Chengfeng really believed that Su Luo was afraid of him. Su Luo smirked in her head, but her face only revealed an appearance of someone who was about to sob. She thought it over again and again. In the end, she reluctantly handed over her purse to Lu Chengfeng. Before Lu Chengfeng could take it, Su Luo withdrew her hand. "What are you doing now?" Lu Chengfeng angrily said as he glared at Su Luo with eyes wide open. Su Luo merely turned around to look at Old Chun and said to him, "Will Uncle Chen act as a witness for me, please?" When the time came and the crystal stone was dug out of that source stone, what was to be done if Lu Chengfeng changed his mind and reneged on this deal? There was no doubt Lu Chengfeng was this type of a moral character. Doing this kind of thing would indeed be a piece of cake for him. Just now, Old Chun was able to intimidate Lu Chengfeng to stop with just one sentence. Su Luo was clearly able to understand that Old Chun was Lu Chengfeng's nemesis. Old Chun took a slight glance at Su Luo. A pair of eyes that had become cloudy with the passage of the years all of a sudden had a fleeting flash of coldy clear rays of light. He was just like that, unmoving as he quietly sized up Su Luo. His eyes had a complicated expression. This kind of examining gaze made Su Luo's heart a little upset from fear. She had a faint feeling that since the time she had first taken a step into this residence, Old Chun had an attitude of probing and examining her the entire time. This made her heart become secretly curious. Sizing her up for quite a while, it was not known how many circles Old Chin's forceful mind revolved around. Finally, he agreed and nodded his head. He indifferently said, "Fine." Agreed. Lu Chengfeng momentarily was stumped for words. This was simply too hard to believe. Su Luo was unaware of Old Chin's origins, but Lu Chengfeng knew a little bit about it. Otherwise, he as the second young master from the Prime Minister's residence wouldn't be so afraid of the consequences of offending this old man from the marketplace. From his own impression, this rotten old man was always unsmiling and laconic. For a long period of time, Lu Chengfeng had believed that this rotten old man was mute because he had never seen the old man talk to anyone. Afterwards, He had come more often and occasionally would hear a word or two from the old man's mouth. However, the majority of the time, Old Shun wouldn't take notice of other people, even if that person the mercenary union's president, the venerable Beichun. However, this loathsome girl, she would actually invite this rotten old man to act as a witness? And this rotten old man had actually agreed? Regarding this issue, Lu Changfeng becomes somewhat confused. In the end, what was the origin of this loathsome girl? Chapter 228, Speechless on the Spot. 1. To say she was from a noble background, but she obviously looked like a waste. Moreover, her complexion was a waxy yellow with average features. On her body, he really couldn't make out any of the telling mannerisms and aloofness a person from noble family background would have. To say she was from a commoner background, but against all expectations, in the raw material marketplace, even the captain of the guards would come over to stand up for her. Moreover, this rotten old man also gave her special treatment. Therefore, Lu Changfeng was perplexed. Then just write a document of proof, Su Luo smilingly said. Document of proof? Old Shun shot a glance at Lu Changfeng. His muddy eyes narrowed dangerously. It had a kind of raw, cold aura of a sword being unsheathed. No need. There's no need for something like a document of proof. Having you, the elder, vouching for this exchange, who would dare to renege? Who doesn't want to continue mingling in this raw materials marketplace? Lu Changfeng repeatedly waved his hand while forcing out a pretend smile. Old Shun then turned his gaze to face Su Luo. He nodded his head and coldly said, Rest assured, even if you cut out a piece of green crystal stone, nobody would dare to covet what's yours. A smiling expression appeared in Su Luo's eyes. Since Uncle Chun said it, then someone as humble as me naturally will believe it. Su Luo had barely finished speaking when she immediately took out a bag from her wide sleeves. With the next movement, she tossed it to Lu Changfeng. 1,000 gold coins, no more no less. Now we are even, right? Lu Changfeng thought that Su Luo had given in because of his own threat. So he was elated and in a very cheerful mood. Because in this way, he had earned back all the gold coins he lost today. Lu Changfeng weighed the bag full of gold coins, smiling with a belittling expression while looking at Su Luo, and waved his hands. Okay, now that piece of urine-covered waste of a rock material is now yours. Speaking of this girl, she really was stupid. He had merely used a little intimidation on her, but unexpectedly, she really took out 1,000 gold coins. Just looking at her forehead, he saw 8 words. Foolish person with too much money, come quickly. Lu Changfeng was extremely happy. Humming a ditty, he contentedly sat down under the wisteria tree's blossoms. He had one leg crossed over the other, contemptuously looking down at Su Luo. And also at this time, Su Luo was simply ecstatic. 1,000 gold coins. She had merely used 1,000 gold coins to exchange for that piece of source stone. This was simply too worthwhile. The little divine dragon's Awu speech was something nobody else understood, but she actually did. Earlier, she had already made up her mind to do whatever it took to get this piece of source stone. Su Luo swept a quick glance at the still feeling blissful Lu Changfeng. Seeing that right now, he had an expression of flaunting the fact that he had gotten the better end of the deal and had taken advantage of her. She couldn't help feeling that he was laughable. Lu Changfeng didn't want to leave? Extremely good. Then she'd just let him see with his own eyes his missed opportunity. Let him regret until his intestines were green. Su Luo was just about to go and cut open the source stone. However, she never expected that old Shun would be a step faster and walk right in front of her. He snatched that half of the source stone from her with a serious expression and said, Miss, this time, let this old man cut open the source stone for you, all right? Su Luo somewhat embarrassedly said, Uncle Chun, you wanting to cut the stone for me can't be better. However, this source stone was peed on by my puppy. How could I have the nerve to ask you to cut it open for me? Old Shun faintly smiled as he quickly glanced at Su Luo. He lowered his voice and, stressing every word, said, "Being able to get the little divine gold dragon's pea should be an honor for this piece of source stone." Huh. Su Luo was speechless on the spot. This old Chun. How did he know that the puppy was not a real puppy, but rather from the dragon race? Moreover, he could readily point out that he was from the most respected royal family of the dragon race, the divine gold dragon race. This was simply too formidable. Seeing Su Luo's entire face become stunned from surprise, the corner of old Chin's mouth seemed to lift into a shallow arc. He gave a humph and coldly said, "What are you afraid of? Old Chun doesn't have the time to prattle this everywhere." Chapter 229. Speechless on the spot, 2. No, that's not it. Why would you? An elderly person think? In the end, how was he able to see through the disguise? Su Luo picked up the little guy and looked at him from top to bottom. According to her own eyes, this clearly was a pure white-colored little puppy. Where has it leaked the appearance of a little divine dragon? Old Shun merely smiled and didn't respond. He merely looked deeply at Su Luo and the little divine dragon. Afterwards, he turned his entire attention to concentrate on that piece of source stone that was soaked in urine. Old Shin, from the start, didn't choose to use the cutting knife, but instead used the stone sharpening knife. From the surface, he slowly polished towards the interior. During this entire process, his expression was serious and very focused. He was very careful and cautious, afraid that because of a coarse action, he would cause an abrasion that would ruin a high-quality crystal stone. And now, apart from Su Luo, there was another person watching at Old Chin's side. This person was none other than Lu Chengfeng, who was extremely happy just a moment ago. In the beginning, he was indeed deliriously happy. However, when he saw Old Chun take the stone from Su Luo to personally cut it, afterwards, he became somewhat unsure and perturbed. Hastily, he stood up and voluntarily ran over to observe. Old Chin's pair of hands that was cutting the stone flowed gracefully, giving off an extraordinary sense of beauty. It was just that the source stone gradually got smaller and smaller from polishing. When it finally was the size of a goose egg, a trace of a crystal stone still could not be seen. The breath Lu Chengfeng was holding suddenly loosened. He saw Su Luo's expression becoming downcast. Immediately, he smiled and was overjoyed. Hey, you couldn't have thought that there really is a piece of crystal stone in here, right? Really made me laugh to death. I already said it was just waste material. How could it have a crystal stone inside? Look here. You made Old Shin work so hard for you in vain. Su Luo's hands was looped around her arms. Her eyes swept across him coldly. What? You think there's no crystal rock inside? Do you want to make a bet? Su Luo's gaze stayed on that purse hanging on Lu Chengfeng's waist. 1,000 gold coins was not a small sum of money. Spending it on source stones was not altogether inexcusable. However, if Lu Chengfeng got to keep the coins from Su Luo, then she would certainly not feel very pleased about this outcome. I'll bet. Who is afraid of whom? Lu Chengfeng couldn't wait to cheat more gold coins from Su Luo's body. Because when he looked at Su Luo, he didn't have a good feeling. Whenever he saw her out of luck, he was sincerely happy. Then okay, let's just bet with the bag of gold coins from before. Su Luo raised her hand and unconcernedly said, If there is nothing inside that goose egg-sized source stone, then it's your win. The converse result is my win. What do you think? Okay. Lu Chengfeng threw that bag of gold coins on the table. Su Luo also didn't fall behind. She raised her hand and conveniently, another bag of gold coins appeared on the table. Afterwards, both of their gazes transferred to Old Chin's direction, their eyes staring fixedly on Old Chin's skillful hands that were wrinkled like an orange peel, but still nimble. Following that, the source stone gradually became smaller and smaller. It finally ended up being only as big as a chicken egg. The corner of Lu Chengfeng's mouth curved into a magnificent, proud smile. He contemptuously swept a glance at Su Luo. You're definitely going to lose. The outcome hasn't been decided yet. so be patient and wait for it. Su Luo looked at that piece of source stone as she responded with humble-sounding words. A crystal stone that could make the little divine dragon this excited. It was definitely not a low-grade crystal stone. Most likely, it was of a higher grade than a green-colored crystal stone, right? Su Luo held her chin and silently pondered. Humph, a dead duck mouthing off, just wait a bit. You will be humiliated. Lu Changfeng gave a cold snort. Inside of a source stone that small would have a crystal stone? Who were you trying to fool? He sure wouldn't believe it. However, very quickly, reality gave a resounding slap to Lu Chengfeng's face. Lu Chengfeng wasn't able to smile again. There was no time for it to retreat, so momentarily, the smile at the corner of his mouth became stiff. Chapter 230, Speechless on the Spot, 3, because he unexpectedly saw, on the edge of that chicken egg-sized source stone, a faint trace of a greenish-blue color had actually emerged. Was it green or cyan-colored? It was hard to tell apart, but regardless, having any color was great. Also at this moment, Old Chin's gaze became even more focused. He slowed down the speed he was using to polish the stone. He very carefully rubbed away at this corner and that corner. Soon, the crystal stone that was concealed beneath the grayish-white layer emerged in front of everyone's eyes. Crystal stone. A cyan with some green, colored crystal stone? This was simply too frightening. Originally, even a green-colored crystal stone was extremely rare on this continent. It was difficult to get one with simply 10,000 gold coins. Yet, before everyone's eyes, this piece was not only green, but it even had a bright cyan color. A cyan with some green, it could be treated and sold as a cyan-colored crystal stone. This was worth 50,000 gold coins. Lu Chengfeng only felt his legs go limp, with his vision turning dark. He almost fainted. How was this possible? It was simply too inconceivable. It was beyond a person's imagination. This clearly was waste material that he didn't want and then discarded. Heavens, he had actually sold a source stone containing a cyan and green-colored crystal stone worth 50,000 gold coins, for merely 1,000 gold coins to another person. Presently, Lu Changfeng really was regretful to the extent that his intestines were green. He was itching to pounce over and snatch that crystal stone back into his own arms. Uncle Chen, you have such skillful hands. Such formidable luck. If you didn't personally undertake this task, and I were to try to cut out this crystal stone, then for sure, I would have broken and ruined it. Su Luo's expression was unperturbed. Her smile was the same as before, not changing even a little bit because of the appearance of a high-grade crystal stone. Old Chen saw Su Luo's unruffled and calm expression and contrasted it against Lu Chengfeng, who was pounding his chest and stomping his feet. His eyes narrowed. Put it away carefully. Okay. Su Luo carefully received this piece of crystal stone and started to admire it in great detail. This cyan with green-colored crystal stone was only the size of a pigeon's egg. Laying in the palm of her white hand, under the light of the sun, it shone with brilliant rays. Moreover, you could feel the distinct rich spirit aura flowing above it. Lu Changfeng firmly fixed his gaze on Su Luo. That pair of eyes which were previously rejoicing in her misfortunes now were filled with a chilly, frosty haze. Su Luo lifted her eyes, indifferently took a quick glance at him and didn't say a word. In front of his face, she put away the 2 bags of money that was on the table. Playing down her actions, she said, "You lost." Lu Chengfeng's expression became even uglier. The 1,000 gold coins that he had won back with great difficulties was so easily once again taken away by this loathsome girl. What's more, Lu Chengfeng's rigid gaze stared at that cyan with green-colored crystal stone. He was itching to snatch it back with one grab and take it for himself. This source stone was his? No, it was originally his. Lu Chengfeng gritted his teeth and said, "Miss, name a price for this crystal stone. Whatever for?" Su Luo unhappily rolled her eyes at him. "Sell it to me. No matter how much you're asking price, sell it to me." Lu Chengfeng bit down on his teeth. stressing each word until he spit out this sentence. That pair of red eyes containing a raging inferno fixedly stared at Suluo, as if, once Suluo refused, he would unhesitantly rush over and choke her to death. Suluo impatiently let out a sigh and speechlessly looked at Lu Chengfeng. I say, the second young master Lu, what is the problem with you? Why is it that you always want to buy things from me? Suluo stretched out her hand and started to count on each finger. First, you wanted me to sell you my red crystal stone. Then, you wanted me to sell you my spirit pet. Now, landing here, you once again threatened me to sell you my cyan-colored crystal stone. I say, the second young master Lu, for good or bad, you are still a legitimate son of the Prime Minister's home. How could you have such a never-seen-the-world manner? Chapter 231. Speechless on the spot. 4. Su Luo's words immediately became concise and sharp as she got to the main point straight away. These remarks, in a bantering tone, carried a strong ridiculing undertone, since her tone was not necessarily strict. However, it enumerated Lu Chengfeng's shortcomings from start to finish, which immediately made him flush with anger. He gasped as his breathing became coarse. He was infuriated until he was hopping mad. Lu Chengfeng's body was shaking and his finger pointed at Su Luo. Loathsome girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Unexpectedly, Su Luo seemed to be very disdainful of him. She carried the little divine dragon and unhurriedly said, Oh? So what I said just now was all nonsense. Before, didn't you, second young master Lu, threaten me to sell the crystal stone to you? Maybe I heard wrong. If so, then indeed, I am very sorry. Saying this, Su Luo carried the little divine dragon, turned around, and proceeded to leave. The Lu Chengfeng behind her was infuriated till he was half dead. The one breath he stifled in his throat moved up and down, not knowing if it should snarl out or be swallowed down. Su Xiaoyuan, who was behind Su Luo, had an extremely worshipful gaze as he stared at Su Luo. His pair of eyes was sparkling with light, as if he was watching the idol he most adored. Cool. She was simply too cool. That was the second young master from the Prime Minister's residence. The miss had actually showed no quarter when criticizing him, showering him with abuse. Not only did she scold the opponent until he was dejected and covered in dirt, she also made the opponent unable to voice his bitter suffering. This ability was truly at the pinnacle when it came to scolding someone. Su Xiaoyuan's admiration was so great that he was about to kneel down in worship. Su Xiaoyuan, what are you thinking about? Quickly come and lead the way. Today, I still haven't selected any source stones. Su Luo patted this little guy's head. Just a moment ago, she had seen old Chun, but after the crystal stone was cut out, he had disappeared without a word or sound. Now, she could only rely on her little guide. Oh, okay, Su Xiaoyuan said. With this, his thoughts returned. His pair of eyes was still sparking with a worshipping light, like before while gazing at Su Luo. Su Xiaoyuan seemed to be very familiar with this place. He guided Su Luo through many twists and turns as they walked towards the inner area. Very soon, they arrived at a shabby remote courtyard in the residence. This remote courtyard was empty and bare. Inside, there wasn't even the basic furnishing. It only had piles and piles of source stones. The source stones were properly labeled and separated based on their grades. Every pile had a clearly labeled corresponding price tag. And also, on the side were stone cutting tools provided free of charge to customers who wanted to cut open the stones. Just after Su Luo and Su Xiaoyuan left, Lu Chengfeng suddenly convulsed and woke up from his stupor. His gloomy gaze stared fixedly at the stone fragments on the ground, his thoughts gradually becoming clearer. Today, in total, he had only seen that loathsome girl twice, and both times, she had been able to cut out a crystal stone. What did this indicate? This indicated that it was not because of her good luck, but she had a precious treasure on her body. This was a treasure that could distinguish whether a source stone had a crystal stone inside it or not. Yes, it must be like this, no doubt about it. No, I must follow after her. Even if she ate meat, he should at least snatch away some soup to drink. He couldn't let her monopolize all the convenient advantages. Thinking up to here, Lu Chengfeng's expression was restored. He brought his servant and walked with large strides towards the remote courtyard where Su Luo had gone. When Lu Chengfeng arrived, Su Luo was crouched on the ground, carefully examining the source stones, looking at it one by one. Of course, she was merely faking it. The one who truly knew if a source stone had a crystal stone was the little divine dragon, and not her. However, she could not simply reveal the little divine dragon's skills. Otherwise, relying on her current puny strength, not only was she unable to protect him, she would instead bring him harm. Suddenly, Su Luo sensed a fervently hot and sinister gaze focused on her back. Su Luo didn't need to turn her head around to guess that this pair of hate-filled eyes certainly belonged to Lu Chengfeng. Chapter 232. Speechless on the Spot. 5. What was he doing following after her here? Was he still thinking to forcefully buy the cyan-colored crystal stone from her hand? Su Luo thought about it and shook her head in denial. At least within the Chen residence, Lu Chengfeng wouldn't dare to brazenly mess around. Then, what was his purpose in following her now? Su Luo's gaze swept towards the little divine dragon, who was rolling and bouncing around on top of the source stones. Suddenly, her gaze turned to Frost. That's right. He might have guessed at a clue and ran over to add more pressure to her. Since it was like this, then wouldn't it be better to? Su Luo's mouth evoked into a sinister sneer. Lu Chengfeng, Lu Chengfeng, since you were unwilling to give up and still wanted to play, then this miss will toy with you to death. Su Luo feigned a very serious examining manner. She looked at the source stone that weighed over hundreds of kilograms in front of her inch by inch. Then, she rubbed and tapped it. Suddenly, a happy, surprised look appeared on her face. However, it seemed as if she was also afraid of people seeing her expression, so she exerted her will to purse her lips instead. It looked as if she was trying to control her own excited expression. After a moment, she furtively lifted her head and her eyes circled around. After she found that nobody took notice of her, she then softly released a breath. The scenario mentioned above, all of it entered Lu Chengfeng's gaze. Su Luo took out an ink stick and was just about to write on top of the source stone. However, all of a sudden, a hand extended over from the side. Quickly, he wrote down his last name on that over hundreds of kilograms source stone. Old Chen's rule was that whoever wrote their name first on top of the source stone, that source stone would then belong to that person. Su Luo turned her head and looked. She discovered that the person who came was actually Lu Chengfeng. She couldn't help being agitated and indignantly roared. What's the matter with you? Where did you come from? It was obviously me who settled on this one first. When other people look at stone materials, bystanders are not allowed to interfere. Such a simple rule, and you couldn't even understand? Who knew? Lu Chengfeng only swept her a cold and quick glance, then arrogantly said, This source stone. This lord had already settled on it earlier. Only due to urgently leaving to cut stones. That's why it was temporarily set aside. As to saying who was earlier, then I was also before you. Su Luo seemed to have not been very lightly angered. Her little face was flushed from anger, with an attitude of itching to rush over to choke the opponent to death. What you? If you have the ability, then you should have acted faster. Your actions were so slow. Who are you trying to blame? Lu Chengfeng contemptibly rolled his eyes at Su Luo. He only excitedly directed his lackeys to carry away that source stone. Good. I'll let you have this lump of stone. However, you can clearly see that this lump of source stone is 3,000 gold coins. Don't you regret it? Su Luo seemed to be very indignant. She stomped her feet and very unhappily walked away. 3,000 gold coins? Only now had Lu Chengfeng clearly seen the marked price on top. Suddenly, he felt his heart jump. Such an expensive source stone? However, it didn't matter. Since that loathsome girl wanted to buy this source stone so badly, then that proved that a crystal stone was inside this source stone. It was surely like this. That loathsome girl must be bluffing. She probably wanted him to transfer the source stone to her. Lu Changfeng only coldly snorted. He wasn't going to fall for it. After that, Su Luo concentrated her attention as before. She carefully and meticulously tapped the stones. Afterwards, every time when she was just about to choose a stone, Lu Changfeng would seize the opportunity and snatch it away. Finally, Su Luo exploded in anger. Lu Changfeng, what is the meaning of this? Lu Changfeng triumphantly said, these source stones are not your family's. If this lord wants to buy, he will buy. What does it have to do with you? Okay, okay, okay. Then you can buy all of these. Hope you don't go bankrupt. Su Luo panted with rage and stomped her feet. Seeing Su Luo was infuriated until she was hopping mad, Lu Changfeng's mood increasingly soared up. What if inside those source stones there were no crystal stones? If that were so, how could this loathsome girl be infuriated to this point? It was obvious that this loathsome girl was flying into a rage out of humiliation. Lu Changfeng calmly waved his fan and blindly followed Su Luo's actions behind her back. Chapter 233. Speechless on the Spot. 6. Those 7 pieces of source stones should help you earn enough profit. Why are you still following me? Su Luo unhappily glared at him. She used her maximum lung capacity and yelled out loud, Uncle Chin, Lu Changfeng would not abide by the rules for gambling stones. You should come over quickly and take care of this. Lu Changfeng was so angry that he almost sprained his neck. This loathsome girl really thought that old Chin was her real uncle, for her to even call him over? However, old Chin, who usually appeared and disappeared unpredictably, actually really did show up this time. His pair of dark, moody eyes gazed at Lu Changfeng with deadly stillness. His voice was stern and cold. Not abiding by the rules, then get lost. Afterwards, under Lu Changfeng's incredulous gaze, old Chun once again quietly and lacking any interest, disappeared. Lu Changfeng opened and closed his mouth and choked back his saliva with great difficulty. His gaze slowly shifted up to Su Luo's face. Could this loathsome girl and old Chun really have a previous relationship? Humph. Su Luo enthusiastically swept him a glance. She picked up a few lumps of source stones. After she paid gold coins for them, she placed them in front of the stone cutting tools and started to cut the stones. Right now, the time of the day was still early. However, a few frequent visitors also came to Old Chin's residence. Gradually, the surroundings started to become livelier. Su Luo took the cutting tools with her own hands and then fixed the source stone in place. She didn't expend much strength before removing the outer layer of the stone. The stone now was a shining white color without any marks, indicating that it could have a crystal stone inside. Su Luo's expression was the same as before as she unhurriedly continued to cut the stone. In Old Chin's place, very few people would cut open a source stone. Su Luo's actions immediately attracted a crowd of people to come over. Gradually, she was surrounded by a group of people. Lu Changfeng's attention was also attracted to Su Luo, who was cutting stones on the side. He couldn't help joining the crowd around her and surreptitiously watched her. He felt that this loathsome girl's luck was extremely good. Maybe this time, she would cut out a high-grade crystal stone again. When Su Luo saw Lu Changfeng's silhouette from the corner of her eyes dropped down. Nobody paid attention to that unfathomable and obscure deep meaning in her eyes. Cow pie, 1, crystal stone. The piece of source stone in Su Luo's hand definitely contained a crystal stone. However, it was the lowest grade of crystal stone called cow pie crystal stone. Cow pie crystal stone, as its name implied, was a crystal stone with just a very thin layer under the surface of the source stone. Beneath the thin layer of crystal stone, the inside was empty of any crystal stone. This type of cow pie crystal stone was used to cheat and fool people. Before, Su Luo had originally fancied this piece of source stone. However, then the little divine dragon said, cow pie crystal stone, these 4 words, to her. Just these 4 words immediately made Su Luo change her plans. Since this cow pie crystal stone was used to cheat people, then not to defraud Lu Changfeng, this kind of foolish spendthrift, who else would she save it for? Therefore, Su Luo decided to cut the source stone containing the cow pie crystal stone open at the scene. Based on the little divine dragon's directions, Su Luo slowly cut away at it using the stone-cutting tool. Cut after cut. This source stone in front of her was worth 5,000 gold coins, and she was treating it as if it was an ordinary stone. One could see that her hands were as firm and steady as a boulder, with speed that was fast as the wind, gentle and beautiful movements that were natural and unforced. Her hands didn't tremble even a tiny bit. Su Luo's slender and pale fingers lifted up the thin outer layer that was cut open. Everyone followed her gaze and looked at that source stone. Seeing what was underneath, suddenly, everyone inhaled a deep breath in shock. Heavens! What was happening here? A crystal stone appeared. This was for certain. However, unexpectedly, it was actually a cyan-colored crystal stone. Wasn't this young lady's luck rather too good? Cyan-colored crystal stone. Ah, how precious was this? Hadn't it been a while since news of cutting out a cyan-colored crystal stone in the imperial capital came out? Momentarily, everyone's mouth was open wide. Their expression when looking at Su Luo was as if they had seen a ghost. For a very long time, they were stunned and couldn't return back to reality. 1. Cow pie is the Chinese spelling meaning thin layer like sheepskin or leather. The author is describing a paper-thin layer made of crystal stone with nothing inside. So when you cut it open, it looks like it could be a solid crystal stone, but inside there is nothing. Chapter 234, Speechless on the Spot, 7. As Lu Chengfeng's pair of eyes watched Su Luo, he almost spit out blood. This loathsome girl, how could she be so great? Just a minute ago, she had cut out a cyan-colored crystal stone. Now once again, it was a cyan-colored crystal stone. She. In front of her, could these crystal stones be merely cabbages in the field that she could randomly pick one and find one? Right now, Lu Chengfeng was so envious that he almost spit out some blood. Even old Chun, whose movements were always mysterious, had now quietly appeared behind Su Luo. He gazed at Su Luo's figure with a complicated expression. The area that was cut open wasn't big. To say it more accurately, it only exposed a section that was the size of a baby's palm. However, that cyan-colored radiance that everyone would be delighted with seemed to gush out. It was clear and sparkling, with a rich spirit power that refreshed the mind. 30,000 gold. Nobody knew who first yelled out this sentence from the crowd. That person, while speaking, was also trying to squeeze into the crowd with all his might. The government official's hat on his head had become somewhat askew when he finally squeezed to Su Luo's side. Without saying a word, he squatted down to carefully observe that piece of source stone. Yes, no doubt about it. This spirit power that could refresh the mind couldn't possibly be faked. It undoubtedly was a cyan-colored crystal stone. Right now, Su Luo had only cut out a little piece. What was hidden inside the source stone behind this section? Nobody knew. So this oldly person started to bid without delay. Because once Su Luo cut out a complete piece of crystal stone, then its worth would basically be hard to predict. However, nobody present at the scene was a fool. Since Oldly could see though the situation, how could they also not understand? What was more, it resembled a cyan-colored crystal stone. This kind of high-grade crystal stone, on this continent, was always a commodity in high demand. Something that was rarely discovered but highly sought after, with a matching pricelessness in the market. 40,000 gold. Another person did his best to squeeze into the crowd towards Su Luo while loudly shouting out a price. Little miss, this old man will give you 40,000 gold. Do you want to sell it? 44,000 gold. Before Su Luo could respond, another person followed closely behind with another offer. 45,000 gold. Immediately, another person rushed in with a bid. 46,000 gold. 50,000 gold. Oldly clapped his hands and loudly shouted out, everyone, cutting out a cyan-colored crystal stone. The market price is set at 50,000 gold. This hasn't been completely cut out. Nobody knows what's in there. It's best that everyone doesn't let their emotions affect their decisions. From the corner of her eyes, Su Luo glanced at Lu Chengfeng, who was standing on the side with an excitement-filled expression. The corner of her mouth hooked up slightly. Lu Chengfeng, just waiting for you to bid. While thinking this, Su Luo followed the previous cut and took another slice along the side. After the knife sliced down, lifting up that small piece of the outer layer, indeed, it was still a cyan-colored crystal stone. Momentarily, everyone became excited. They became impassioned and created a commotion. Yes, it really was a cyan-colored crystal stone. It was absolutely not wrong. Since this slice could cut out a cyan-colored crystal stone, then naturally, the next cut would also have it. Su Luo saw Lu Chengfeng's pair of eyes emitting a red light. Both of his hands were tightly clenched into fists. He was excited until his heart was bursting with joy. Good, very good, Lu Chengfeng. The person I want to defraud is none other than you. Come quickly. Not outside of Su Luo's expectations, Lu Chengfeng walked towards Su Luo with large strides. He took a quick glance at that cyan-colored crystal stone and straightaway opened his mouth to say, 80,000 gold coins. The market price of a cyan-colored crystal stone was originally 50,000 gold. However now, Lu Chengfeng had forcibly raised the price to 80,000. This made everyone look at each other in dismay for a moment. Oldly frowned. After carefully examining that opening again, he clenched his teeth and announced another price. 90,000 gold coins. Lu Chengfeng arrogantly raised his chin. A cyan-colored crystal stone is rarely found and much sought after. I, Lu Chengfeng, representing Prime Minister Lu's residence, bid 100,000 gold. Chapter 235. Speechless on the spot. 8. The elder in the Lu family had been stuck at the 6th rank for many years. He was at the point of time when he needed crystal stones the most. This cyan-colored crystal stone would probably be extremely helpful to him, helping him ascend to the 7th rank. At that time, the entire Lu family would jump ahead to become the most powerful noble family in the capital. When the time comes, he, Lu Chengfeng, would be greatly rewarded for contributing to the elevation of the Lu family. In this case, compared to the Lu family's future prospects, this insignificant 100,000 gold wouldn't be too high a cost, right? Lu Chengfeng arrogantly thought of this. 100,000 gold. Ah, Su Luo's forefinger thoughtfully tapped at her chin with a somewhat awkward expression. Young Master Lu, you know, this miss previously didn't like to sell crystal stones. The implication was that even 100,000 gold wasn't enough for her to look upon? Lu Chengfeng's expression stiffened. A dark haze flashed through his eyes. However, before he could yell out loud in anger, Su Luo's tone of voice had already changed. However, young Master Lu's price persuaded me. Then, with 100,000 gold, I'll transfer it to you. Lu Chengfeng laughed smugly. He was under the impression that this loathsome girl's bones were made of unshakable iron. So before, it was because the price he gave was inadequate. It just wasn't enough to move her. Sure enough, the stuff on this earth all had a price. Everything could be bought with gold. Underneath everyone's gaze, after second young Master Lu handed over 100,000 gold, that piece of source stone would then belong to him. Today, Lu Chengfeng could be said to have spent a lot of money on this matter. First, he was cheated out of a cyan with green-colored crystal stone by Su Luo. Then, he lost 1,000 gold coins to Su Luo. Afterwards, because he was snatching source stones from Su Luo again, he had spent close to 50,000 gold coins. And now, he had given her another 100,000 gold coins. In one day, Lu Chengfeng had spent nearly the entire yearly income from Prime Minister Lu's residence. It could truly be said that this was throwing money away recklessly. However, with regards to this large sum of money, Lu Chengfeng, at this moment, felt it was well worth spending. Then, what did he really receive in return? Now, Lu Chengfeng was squatting on the ground, happily looking at this cyan-colored crystal stone that refreshed the mind. His brain was full of delusional fantasies. He imagined that when he went home and when he offered this cyan-colored crystal stone, the surrounding people would admire him. Also, the elder would have a gratifying, smiling expression. While happily thinking about this, Lu Changfeng couldn't help letting out a laugh with a pfff sound. The surrounding people became somewhat impatient from waiting. Some who were impatient started to loudly urge him. Could this second young Master Lu become stupid from being too happy? However, this crystal stone still hasn't been completely cut out. Who knows if after the following cut, underneath is really a cyan-colored crystal stone. That's right, second young Master Lu. Stop being so happy. Quickly continue cutting. It's not too late to be happy after cutting it out. With this, Lu Changfeng finally returned to reality from his sweet daydreams. He wiped away the saliva that had unintentionally leaked out at the corner of his mouth. He gave a slight cough and seriously said, Okay, this lord will personally cut this stone, allowing you guys to see with your own eyes how dazzling a cyan-colored crystal stone is. Lu Changfeng held the handle of the knife with rapid attention as he held his breath and looked at the source stone in front of his eyes. His expression appeared somewhat indecisive. Su Luo was disinclined to once again take notice of him. In any case, no matter how he cut, once this knife sliced down, from inside out, without exception, it was all grayish-white-colored waste. No matter what angle he started to cut, the result would be the same, because the only place with crystal stone had already been cut open by her. Moreover, this piece of cyan-colored source stone was merely a thin layer no thicker than the skin. As to its value, it probably wouldn't exceed several thousand gold. Having once again successfully defrauded Lu Changfeng, Su Luo's mood started to greatly improve. She crooned a little ditty and with Su Xiaoyuan walked inside the residence. Because just now, before old Qin disappeared, he left her a few words. He asked her to go to the basement to look at the goods. Su Luo didn't know that even after such a long time, there was only one person who was asked to go to the basement to look at the goods, and it was only her. Chapter 236, Speechless on the Spot, 9. When she asked Su Xiaoyuan, this child simply did not know that old Shun still had a basement warehouse in his home. Su Luo's hand held a candle as she walked down along the meandering flight of steps. Su Xiaoyuan, meanwhile, had been blocked from entering by another person at the basement's entrance. When Su Luo entered the basement, old Shun was just using his hand to stand up. He calmly sized her up. She didn't know why, but getting looked over by that kind of gaze, Su Luo suddenly felt like she had been seen through. It was as if all of her secrets had already been exposed in front of him. Old Shun merely gave her a sweeping glance, then turned his gaze away, after which he indifferently narrated, "Curious about why this old man treats you so favorably?" His voice was dark and deep. The huskiness carried many years of hardships. Su Luo nodded her head and could not deny it. Compared to Lu Changfeng, old Shun had indeed always, intentionally or otherwise, stood by her side. Not only that, with a single glance, he had even managed to detect the little divine dragon's secret. This point made Su Luo extremely curious. Old Qin's expression was as indifferent as before, and he merely said, "In here, there is a piece of blue-colored crystal rock. If you can truly pick it out, naturally, this old man will tell you." Finished speaking, he looked deeply at Su Luo, and then turned around and exited the basement. What a mysterious old man. Anyway, it didn't matter. She was unable to pick out the source stone, but the little divine dragon could. Inside the basement, Su Luo scanned her surroundings, doing a full circle. Following her slowly moving gaze, a strange feeling emerged from her eyes. The basement's lighting was a bit dim, but to Su Luo, this wasn't much of a hindrance. She looked around closely, yet was once again shocked, because the basement in front of her eyes, regardless of the area or the arrangement, unexpectedly, was an exact copy of Elder Zihua's cave dwelling. At that time, it was at Elder Zihua's residence where she obtained her first batch of source stones. It was also the first time she had found out about the existence of source stones. She didn't expect that the displays arranged here, unexpectedly, resembled those in the cave dwelling. In the end, just what was the relationship between Elder Zihua and Old Shun? Old Chun had given her special treatment compared to others. Was it because he had discovered that she had inherited Elder Zihua's legacy, so he would act this way? Su Luo's heart was full of questions. There weren't that many source stones in the basement. They were all piled up in a corner. The little divine dragon, following Su Luo's direction, picked out all the source stones in the basement that contained a crystal stone. This selection process unexpectedly shocked Su Luo. Wasn't the proportion of crystal stones here too high? Among the 30 source stones, there were 20 pieces that had crystal stones. Furthermore, even the worst grade of crystal stone was orange-colored, and the best was actually blue-colored. There really was a blue-colored crystal stone? Old Chun didn't deceive her. You actually did find the blue-colored crystal stone. Old Chun quietly appeared. When he saw the source stone containing the blue-colored crystal stone, an odd expression flashed through his eyes. Su Luo stared at him with a guarded expression. This old man appeared and disappeared abruptly. She also didn't know what was currently going on here. Old Chun merely waved his hand, indicating that she shouldn't be nervous. "Little miss, you need not be afraid. This old fellow isn't going to harm you." Seeing Su Luo's wrinkled brows, a smiling expression appeared in Old Chun's eyes. Doesn't the little miss feel that this place seems very familiar? Sure enough, Su Luo held the little divine dragon, gently stroking his soft and yielding fur. She nonchalantly looked at him. Is Uncle Chun quite familiar with Elder Zihua? Elder Zihua, these 3 words, seemed to be a kind of miraculous magical power. In a flash, it made Old Chin's turbid pair of eyes burst out with an odd and astonished radiance. Even though he did the utmost to keep it down, Su Luo, however, was able to sense it. Old Chin's excitement right now was because he had heard Elder Zihua, these 3 words. That was the reason why he became so excited. Su Luo saw that Old Chin's hands, which were concealed by his sleeves, tremble slightly. Therefore, the Chen family was doomed through time to suffer the recoil from this drug. Recoil? Su Luo was puzzled. The offspring of every generation from the Chen family must serve as Elder Zihua's disciple or descendant side for all generations without ever betraying them. Old Chun paused at every word, clearly stating the reasons. If the Chen family don't serve at their side, alas, they can't live past 100 years old. How could it be like this? Su Luo was unable to understand. "Miss, you don't have to believe me. However, my grandfather and father both really did die on their 100th birthday. There has been no exception to this rule." Old Chin's turbid eyes became dim for a split second. He then added another sentence. "At the time of their death, their faces were serene without a touch of bruising. Just like that, they died in their sleep. It was exactly the same as what our ancestors told us." Seeing Su Luo's eyes wide open in disbelief, a trace of a wry smile flashed through Old Chin's eyes. Therefore, the greatest wish for every generation in the Chen family is to find Elder Zihua or the person who inherited his legacy, and afterwards, to serve by their side. But Su Luo somewhat frustratedly and helplessly motioned with her hands. "Right now, I'm not even an apothecary. I don't have the ability to undo the curse on your body." No need to undo the curse. Old Chun kneeled down on both knees with a solemn expression, saying, "I beseech you." If the miss could accept Old Chun, then Old Chun already couldn't thank you enough. Chapter 238, Speechless on the Spot, 11. When she saw Old Chun, who could easily intimidate Lu Changfeng kneeling in front of her, momentarily Su Luo's mood was somewhat complex. If it was really like what Old Chun said, wouldn't it be that she had obtained a huge helping hand for free? Old Chun's influence and strength were not low. However, Su Luo still had a small point that she couldn't figure out, so she straight out just asked, "How did you recognize that I was the one who inherited Elder Zihua's legacy?" She consciously felt that she herself hadn't revealed any flaws. Old Chun smiled bitterly as he handed over a piece of jade, saying, "Back then Elder Zihua had left behind a piece of jade. He said that if the person who inherited his legacy came, this piece of jade would shine." When Miss arrived, this piece of jade really did shine. There was really something this mystical. Su Luo took the offered blue jade pendant. She looked at it from left to right, up and down, carefully taking its measure. No matter how she looked at it, it looked like a regular jade pendant. Su Luo returned the jade pendant. "Then you should carefully put it away." "No, it's better if the miss takes good care of it." Old Chin's face had an emotionally moved color. "Since I have already found the miss, this jade pendant is now useless to me. Maybe it will be useful for the Mississippi." Since Su Luo couldn't decline it, she had no alternative but to accept. "These source stones were intentionally saved for the master, and I hope the master won't dislike them." Old Chun had already voluntarily changed the forms of addressing people. His manner now also carried a touch of respect. "Okay." Su Luo didn't try to refuse and very naturally received his good intentions. Since Old Chin was already one of her people, Su Luo also didn't keep him in the dark. In front of him, she waved her hand and took all the source stones into her space. Old Chin's pupils contracted, incredulously staring at Su Luo. "Space? Space mage? Master is actually a space mage?" Su Luo smiled faintly and glanced at him. "Is there a problem?" "No problem. Absolutely no problem. I merely didn't expect that Master is the rarely seen space mage." Old Sean still somewhat disbelievingly said, "To be capable of obtaining Elder Zihua's legacy, the person must be of wood and fire dual elements." However, his family's master in addition to these two was also a space mage that was almost extinct on this continent. When all was said and done, this was how formidable of a talent. Truly, just thinking about it, he was filled with expectation. Originally, Old Chun had felt a little bit uncomfortable at having to serve such a young Mississippi. But after Su Luo revealed this skill, he wholeheartedly acknowledged her as his master. He was looking forward to seeing what height his family's little master would reach in the future when she grew up. After she had sent all the source stones into her space, Su Luo placed the little divine dragon in her space to peel out the crystal stones. Su Luo along with Old Chun walked out of the basement. Arriving at the front courtyard, she found that it was clamorous and bustling with excitement. It seemed very lively. Among the crowd, Lu Chengfeng was standing there dumbstruck. He dumbfoundedly stared at the source stone in front of him. He couldn't believe what he was seeing was real. Cow Pie Crystal Stone. He actually spent 100,000 gold coins to buy back a piece of cyan-colored cow pie crystal stone. One was worth merely a few thousand gold, and the other was worth 100,000 gold. The gap between the two prices was too big. It was so big that Lu Chengfeng was unable to react. How can it be like this? How? How can it be a cow pie crystal stone? Lu Chengfeng's pair of bloodshot eyes rigidly fixated on that fragment. His mouth mumbled words directed at himself. His person was almost entirely stunned into a stupor. The few people surrounding him continuously shook their heads. Some of them were glad, some sympathized with him, and still more ridiculed him. Didn't think this was actually a cow pie crystal stone. Fortunately, this old man didn't win the bid. Otherwise, I would have lost miserably right now. Oldly said with some lingering fear over this close call. Therefore, people would say when gambling with stones. One cut to poverty, one cut to riches, truly hard to tell. Chapter 239. Speechless on the Spot, 12. That's right. Only this for 100,000 gold is really too high a price. You should know that even if it was an already cut-out cyan-colored crystal stone, according to the market price, it is only worth 50,000 gold. Right? This price is indeed ridiculously high. Only an idiot would offer this kind of high price. The most laughable thing was that in the end, he cut out a cow pie crystal stone. Everyone was acting as if they were a genius with hindsight. Everybody unceasingly commented, even though the horse had already bolted as they chased after the horse. However, these comments were like sharp thorns that stabbed at Lu Chengfeng's heart, making it hurt sorely time after time. No, no way. He must not go down like this. Didn't he still have a few pieces of source stones that he had bought? Those had all been snatched away from under that loathsome girl's nose. They were unlikely to be lacking. I certainly will cut out a high-quality crystal stone from them. Yes, cut. I must cut. Lu Chengfeng waved his hand and commandingly instructed, "Take out the 7 pieces of source stones I bought before. This lord wants to continue cutting stones." He still wanted to cut some more? The surrounding people all started to whisper, but Lu Chengfeng ignored it all. Now, he must cut out a cyan-colored crystal stone. Otherwise, how could he explain this to his family? He had spent money as if it was running water. Today, in one day, he had spent about 150,000 gold coins. The first piece of source stone, with 1 cut straight down, nothing. The second piece of source stone, with 1 cut across. Nothing. The third piece of source stone, with 1 vertical cut. Nothing. The fourth piece of source stone. The 7th piece of source stone was almost chopped into dust by Lu Chengfeng, but it was still as empty as before. It didn't contain even a tiny bit of crystal stone. At this moment, Lu Chengfeng was about to go insane. 150,000 gold coins, an entire 150,000 gold coins. He had spent all of it and got nothing, but instead had watched it float away like water. A tiny piece of crystal stone. He couldn't obtain even a tiny bit of a red-colored crystal stone. At this moment, Lu Chengfeng's eyes were burning with rage. He nearly lost all rational thought. This was impossible. That loathsome girl at that time has clearly picked these after a long time. She even had a secretly delighted expression. And just at this time, Su Luo, accompanied by Old Chun, was slowly strolling towards there. Su Luo, in the position of a master, walked in front, while Old Chun exhibited the status of a servant, walking half a step behind her. This kind of order looked very odd to everyone who saw it. People who could come here, who didn't know Old Chun. Who didn't know that back then, he was the famous and brilliant king of crystal stones. Him being someone's servant, how could this be possible? Therefore, simply no one could guess the master and servant relationship between Su Luo and Old Chun. Lu Chengfeng didn't crazily rush towards them. Now, his pair of red, bloodshot eyes had already gradually settled down. However, when he looked at Su Luo's back, that cold and shady expression was full of sinister light. The corner of his mouth was hooked into a strangely grim smile. He lifted his hand, beckoned over a servant, and muttered something into his ear. That servant accepted the order and quickly left. This entire process, Lu Chengfeng accomplished it very secretively. Almost no one was aware of this petty little act of his. Su Luo gave Su Xiaoyuan 10 gold coins and smilingly said, "Take it, buy some good stuff for your mother and sister. Also, don't deprive yourself, either." Gold coins. Su Xiaoyuan excitedly looked at the 10 pieces of gold coins in his palm. His mouth was opened wide in disbelief. "Miss, didn't we originally agree on 10 copper coins? Your conduct and deeds today were worth this price. Accept it, and don't let others steal it. At that time, your little body won't be able to take it back." Su Luo smilingly said, But, I didn't do anything today." Su Xiaoyuan very dismayingly said. Today, besides taking the mist to Uncle Chin's place, he didn't do anything else. He received so many gold coins for no reason. He was ashamed to accept it. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.